IB Nation, welcome back to the Irish Breakdown podcast. Ryan Roberts here, Director of Recruiting at irishbreakdown.com. Joined and welcoming back my boy, Sean Davis, recruiting analyst here at irishbreakdown.com, as well as the co-host of the Lucky Lefty podcast. He's back. He's no longer a Trojan lover out there in Southern California. He's
First of all,
back. How are
relax,
you, Shawnee?
Relax, because people would take that the wrong way. Number one. And number two, I was never a Trojan lover. I just happened to be a supporter of education in certain areas for my child. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
How was the graduation? How would everything go out there?
I mean, Ryan, I really don't have the words to explain, man. It is really a full circle moment to watch the sacrifice that you and your wife and your entire family, and think, man, it was great to be able to take 14 people with us. It's basically our entire family. And unfortunately, my dad wasn't able to make it to be able to experience it, but and that was a little bittersweet. But to have 16 people go out there to celebrate her accomplishment and to watch the fulfillment of the time spent, all the hours sitting outside of lessons and practices from the time she was 3. It's words can't even really fully help anyone comprehend what it was like in that moment. It was in that moment I had no problem sitting in the midst of thousands of people shedding tears, and I could care less what anybody else had to say about it. Didn't give a darn what people said, thought. I lived in the moment, and it was awesome, absolutely fantastic.
Well, congratulations to her first and foremost for her accomplishment. I know we're both college graduates, so we know the hard work that goes into being a college graduate. It's not the easiest thing of all time. Man. For some reason, I went back and got a second degree, which was, it's something, man. We know. I think your wife's back in school right now too, right?
Oh, so she's done her master's. She's complete. Graduation is on Thursday.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So, man, some busy times in the Davis household, to say the least. But congratulations to your daughter. Congratulations to you and your family as well, man. I know it's a huge accomplishment. So, guys, we're getting into a really busy show here today. A lot of recruiting talk, obviously. We're going to spend the bulk of this episode talking about the 2025 recruiting class and just confidence levels, right? Offensively, defensively, where we feel good for Notre Dame, where we're still kind of trending in wrong direction. So we're going to give it a number today, right? A scale of 0 to 10. We'll give you guys our honest truth, perspective, background, all that type of stuff as well. But we had a special guest that we're bringing on today, which we're extremely excited about. So we're actually going to start you off with a little bit of 2026 Notre Dame recruiting talk. If you have listened to this channel for long enough, you know that the 2 quarterbacks that we spend the most time talking about for Notre Dame as far as key targets in this class, one is 2026 Lake Mary High School quarterback Noah Grubbs out of the state of Florida, as well as another Floridian, Sean. We got Mr. Brady Hart, who has been on this channel, Coco 2026 quarterback as well. Wanted to give you guys as much perspective as we possibly can. So we thought, who better than to give you guys perspective than the man that trains them both. We've talked about this a lot because there's been a lot of conversation between decision-making processes and timelines and wanting to make the right decision. And obviously both are high on Notre Dame. So how does that work, right? How does that work? So we're going to bring on Baylin Trujillo, who is a renowned quarterback coach in the state of Florida. You can follow him on Twitter at Baylin Trujillo, which is spelled BAYLIN TRUJILLO. That is no spaces, all lowercase. Make sure to follow him on Twitter there. Be True Quarterback Training, as well as Be True's Advanced Quarterback Camp, which he has camps in Florida, North Carolina, and Texas. So bring it on Baylin now. Baylin, appreciate you for hopping on, man. How's everything going?
Am I on, guys?
Yep, you're on. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
A little bit. I think it's a little muddled. I don't know if you can hear us or not. Probably.
Yeah, I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Oh, you got us. Yeah, we got you okay. I felt like there was a little bit of I can hear you okay. Can you hear us? We're good?
Yep, we're all set, man. Appreciate
right,
you guys having
perfect.
me on here. I love talking about my quarterbacks. I'm a believer in what I do and what I bring to the table as far as their development. So what we're going to talk about today, obviously, is going to be pretty special. You guys get a little bit more insight about these two guys that you guys want to talk about. And I believe I have a lot of guys, 4 of the top 10 in the country in that same class. That any one of those guys could be an Irish, fighting Irish. So, but it's really special, man. What I do every day, I love what I do. I've been doing it for 10 years and built an awesome network where I'm able to get my guys in front of the right people to obviously get opportunities to play for different colleges or what have you. But yeah, man, I really appreciate you guys having me on the show.
Oh, no doubt. Well, Baylin, I want to actually start there because if you dig into your research a little bit, obviously you were a college quarterback. I know you spent some time with the Orlando Predators as well as in the professional ranks. I wanted to ask about just your perspective and I guess how important you've been to some of these quarterbacks to showcase, this is how you kind of handle recruiting a little bit, right? This is the chaos around being a quarterback and being able to give them some of that knowledge.
Yeah, man. When I was playing, obviously it looked a lot different than it is now. To be honest with you, back then it was a lot harder to get offers. To be honest with you, I feel like today, if with the way the game is, I feel like offers are unfortunately been handed out a lot. But I feel like when I was playing, it was definitely earned. There was the opportunity when I was in high school. I actually was committed to a program, and a couple days before signing day, if not, I think it was literally the night before, I was told my offer was given to someone else. So the recruiting game is crazy, and unfortunately, you burn some bridges in this, and you focus on the school, and and based off numbers and what they want to do, sometimes it doesn't really work out the way you want it to. So recruiting is very hectic. But as far as me and handling all these guys recruiting, they get the inside job, they get the real scoop of what's really happening and where these guys are on boards, especially as a trainer. It's one thing when the recruits are talking to these coaches, it's another when the trainer is, and they're going to tell me the truth. They might not tell the kid everything that the kid needs to hear or should hear, but they're going to tell me because they know it's easier coming from me to relay their message than coming from them, because ultimately they don't want ever to make a kid feel like they're not good enough or they're not a priority. But when I'm being told 2 guys are number 1 on the board, or maybe one guy's 1 and the other guy's 2, whereas a coach won't tell a kid that, I'm able to steer these kids in the right direction and where these guys should end up going. So I definitely help them out in that process. But yeah, man, I was fortunate enough to play this game at a high level and obviously earn a little bit of money while playing the sport professionally. But man, my passion has always been about training, and it's been a great 10 years, and I plan on doing this for the rest of my life. So, but yeah, man, to answer your question, it does help these guys to know that I've been through this process and I know how to guide them in that direction, and hopefully help them land to the spot where they don't have to feel like they have to go into the portal after year 1 or 2.
Baylin, I'm very interested in how teaching and developing young men to play the position of quarterback as the game has evolved on the high school level, the college level, and into the NFL, how that's impacted the way you've evolved as a teacher. Because one of the important things that we all have to know as teachers is that every student is not the same. And I'm sure every young man
Correct.
that comes to you is not the same. So we know the foundational things, but then how do you go on to be able to develop those young men into what makes them the best quarterback for them? How do you go about doing that, and how has the game and how it's evolved changed your methods?
Yeah, and I think that's really why I separate myself from a lot of these local quarterback trainers and even coaches in the area and even across the country. And I work a lot of camps, and I travel like Ryan said earlier with my camp business, and I've teamed up with former NFL guys and stuff. So I've been able, and I'm young enough to know how the game is evolving, whereas a lot of these older, more, I would say, experienced quarterback trainers are so old school and so robotic that they're not really forming to the new way of the game of being off platform, making creative throws. Like back when I was playing, if you throw across the middle, across your body, you're never going to get that offer. They're going to be like, we can't take a chance. This guy's too risky. Now they want to see that. Are you willing to take that shot? Are you willing to make the creative play happen and put us in a position where it's high risk but also high reward? So that's the way the game is evolving. You see Patrick Mahomes all the time. Yes, granted, he is a pro-style quarterback, but he's making plays with his arm talent and using his feet doing it. So my job as a trainer, and what you just asked me about these different guys with different skill sets, is to focus on the details from the fundamentals and then work up. So I'm very big on footwork development. I'm not a mechanic guy because I know that the way the game is changing, there will be different arm slot angles and arm, different ways to use your arm when creating throws. But if I see something drastic, like the sidearm throw can't be your natural throw. I mean, there's drills that I can do to help you with your mechanics, but I'm not going to focus on that. what I focus on is good feet equals good ball. And if I focus on your footwork and I'm very detailed in that, chances are if you're on time, the ball is going to come out nice and it's going to be delivered right and accurately at a high rate. So that's what I'm very big on. And then, of course, you add the fundamentals to the off-platform throws, which is I'm very creative in my drill work. All my drill work is mine, so I usually take some stuff that I see, but I like to alter it to make it my own. That way I know, hey, I'm working on something that these kids have never experienced. That way when they do the stuff in camps, that stuff is easy. So they've already done the hard stuff through me, and I try to make it very chaotic so that the game is easy and these camp settings are easy, which is why you see a lot of my guys get offers, because they really show themselves and how polished they are when they are in those type of settings, and it's nothing to them. It's actually the easier part than my training. My training is a lot harder than the game. So you start to see the guys that I train, even from the youth level all the way up. I started as young as 5. If you watch really the kids that buy into my program, these kids are all elite. These kids, they buy in, they're training 3-4 times a week, and they're performing at high levels because my training is a lot more difficult than what they're experiencing on the field. My job is to eliminate thinking. So if I can eliminate thinking, now you're more reactive. And if you're reactive, now you're just playing the game. So now it's fun. So now you're not overthinking, is the crowd too loud? Are people watching me? Am I going to make a mistake? No, now we're just going to go based off instinct because you train that way. And that way now you're not thinking, you're just playing the game. And that's when it becomes real fun. And that's how these guys stay consistent. How people bank on guys in the NFL every week, with their fantasy leagues. Well, they know because they're consistent in their game what they're going to get each and every week. Yeah, they might have an off game because not everybody's perfect. But at the end of the day, the consistency is what matters. And if I train you hard, the game is easy and you're not thinking anymore, you're just playing, you're probably going to be consistent in how good you play every week, which is what you see in the guys that I train like Brady, Noah, Darion, Michael, Eli, Jackson, some of these elite guys that have over, 10, 15 plus offers. These guys are just playing. They're not thinking anymore. So every kid has a different skill set. And what I also like to do and what coaches should do at different programs is find the strength of their players. So what I do is after I break them down and I start to build them up fundamentally, I start to see what they're good at. Like every quarterback's going to be good at something different. They're not all the same. So what I do is when I find out what you're good at, I'm going to perfect that. And which makes you whatever type of quarterback. Not every system is the same in college. So some people like RPO, some people like air raid, some people like multiple, some people like pro style. They're all different forms of how offensive coordinators like to use their quarterbacks. Some like the 6'5" prototype, some like the 6'1", 5'11" dual threat. It all depends on what you're looking for. But my job as a trainer is to build you from the fundamentals, and then from there, see what you're good at and really perfect that. So that way you excel at your game. You're not thinking, you're performing. And then whatever college wants to bet on you based off their offensive scheme, that's usually when it works out for them. And that's where those offers start to trend. You start to see a lot of my guys have similar offers, but also different offers because they fit their program better. So it's not about how good you are or they think this guy's better than me. No, it's about what fits these schemes for these colleges. And that's where my conversations go with these coaches when they call me about my quarterbacks, because they want to know what are their strengths and what are their weaknesses.
Baylin, interesting thing that you said, talking about building from the ground up and talking about the footwork and that aspect of it. When we've heard Gino Guidugli, who obviously is the quarterback coach at Notre Dame, when he talked a lot, especially when he got here, he talked about the same stuff. He said he didn't want to work too much with upper body mechanics. He wanted to work from the ground up and work with the footwork and make sure that the base is always sound and consistent. I'm interested in your conversation before we start getting into Noah and Brady, just your relationship with Gino Guidugli, and it sounds like you guys kind of believe in a lot of the same things, I would say.
Yeah, that's my guy. I mean, dude, we talked even last night. We talked 2 nights. I mean, this guy, I would say, even obviously when spring started, he's on the road recruiting a lot. We would talk at least once or twice a week. I mean, he's recruiting 2 of my top 4 guys, and it's pretty heavy. So, you can only imagine the conversation I'm having. And I'm the point of contact, so they can't be contacted until June 15th, I believe. So until that day, I've been the point of contact the entire year up to this point for both those guys. And you can only imagine, if you see social media wise, how much Notre Dame values both Brady and Noah. I'm on the phone with Gino a lot, like a lot. So, and also Chad Bowden as well, and Coach Freeman, like we're all on the same page. We're all been communicating. They're all recruiting my guys, and I'm getting a really good insight on what they want and what they like. And they both fit the mold for what Notre Dame wants and likes. And I believe as a trainer myself and what Gino, his philosophy is and how he likes to develop and build quarterbacks, I think we're on the same page there, which is why he trusts my ability to develop these guys and speak so highly of the 2 kids that I'm training. So, as far as our relationship, man, like I said, we talk a lot. And like I said, I was just on the phone with him last night.
Nice. Well, so let's get into a couple of these guys. So obviously Lake Mary quarterback, Noah Grubbs, who listed about 6'4", 215, 220 pounds. Obviously when you pop on the film, it doesn't take, I think, a great eye to notice the arm strength and the arm talent this young man has, the big frame he has. Your role as his quarterback trainer, give us a little bit insight, if you can, into physically, personally, what makes him special.
He is a generational talent. Now, his stats say 6'4", 215, 220. He's actually 6'5", 193 pounds. He got all the way up to 228 last season, and we had to have a sit down with our little village. So we have a village. We call it the village, and it's his team. It's his parents. It's myself. It's a couple of different people outside of the family home. His workout trainer, his nutritionist, his stretch guy, his speed and agility guy. So we have a solid team around Noah. And we cut him down from 228 to 193. He's about 8% body fat now. He's completely shredded. If you see him now, his physique is completely changed. So the kid that you saw last August, who now has 7 school records, he's even more dynamic now. So he's completely flipped his whole script. And I'm telling you, it's unbelievable to see, because most kids have a hard time either gaining or losing weight. He's just proved to the whole entire country he can do both. Whether you want him to be the stocky 6'5", 220 pocket quarterback, or you want him to be the 6'4", 6'5", 190 agile kid that can create things with his feet, he's going to do it both ways. And his body's able to accept both ways, which is very, very hard. So I was very pleased to see how his body has changed over the last year into what he is now. He is definitely a generational talent. I believe he has a skill set to go to the NFL. He's been trained early at a young age, the IQ of the game. He's been with Tyson Hinshaw and Darren Hinshaw. Darren's the OC at UCF right now. Tyson is his receiver/co-OC at Lake Mary right now. He was his coach in the youth football. So at a very young age, Noah was exposed to the real fundamentals of the game, understanding protection, understanding coverages, throwing the ball around, which we all see in youth sports. It's handoff left, handoff right, pitch left, pitch right. It's your best player is your quarterback. He's either running it or you're running back. There's no real scheme to youth football. So Lake Mary Pop Warner did a really good job, which is also run by his dad, to learning the fundamentals of the game and learning it early and actually running spread offenses and actually throwing the ball around and actually having strategy, watching other teams' films. Like, you're not seeing that at the youth age as Noah did growing up. So as far as his IQ level, it's off the charts. He's now really learning protections and understanding schemes and how to really protect himself with Coach Donnelly, who's the OC at Lake Mary now, who also was a former Miami Hurricane coach and alumni there. So he's got a lot of great offensive minds around him. And again, that all started at the age of 6 and 7 years old. So he always had the coaching and the mind of a quarterback. Then he got to me in his 8th grade year, and I was the first trainer to completely develop him and flip him into what he is today. And I'll never forget the first day I trained him. I literally told him, if you take this serious, because he liked baseball too. He had like a little wind up in his throw, but I saw the natural gift in his ability to release the ball and the pop and the twerk in his lower body. And I said, look, if you put that baseball down and you believe in my process, I promise you I'll make you the #1 quarterback in the country. His dad kind of looked at me funny, kind of chuckled a little bit, but they bought in, and look at him now. I mean, he's at the top, and he threw 49 touchdowns, again, has 7 school records. He will be the most prolific and most highest rated recruit in Lake Mary history, and they're known for building quarterbacks. So he will be #1. And I'm so excited about his development. And again, he's only really hitting a lower ceiling, if you will. He still has so much more room to grow. And I mean, the fact that he was able to turn his body in 1 year, imagine what he's going to look like in 2 years when he keeps the same regimen and keeps working at his craft and keeps developing. I mean, I have him training with NFL athletes right now. So if his mindset and his confidence is already built to where he's able to perform at that level and work out with those guys at that level, imagine when he's in college and what his mindset's going to be. It's almost like you're already seeing an NFL developed player right now. And here's a side story before we move on. I was on the sideline of a Lake Mary versus Apopka. That's their biggest rival in Orlando. I would say Seminole is too. But Lake Mary and Apopka have had a little rivalry there because Apopka's owned them the last couple times they played. And so this game, it was a big game. Lake Mary was up 28-7 at halftime. They were blowing them out. Noah's already thrown 4 touchdowns at the half. And I was standing next to Vanderbilt's coach, and Vanderbilt had his left tackle committed to Vanderbilt. And so he was talking to me, and I said, man, why haven't you offered Noah? At the time, Noah had like 19 offers. I said, why haven't you guys offered Noah? He goes, dude, of course we've offered Noah. Why wouldn't we? And I said, I bet you a steak dinner right now that you have not offered Noah Grubbs. He goes, okay, I'll call the head coach right now. This is halftime. He calls the head coach of Vanderbilt. He picks up the phone. What's up? He's like, hey, this Noah Grubbs kid, you know much about him? He goes, yeah, we know about him. And he said, didn't we offer him last summer at our camp? He goes, no. And he said, well, what do you mean we didn't offer him? He goes, because we know he wouldn't come here. He's too good enough. It would be a waste of an offer. And so I was like, well, look, I got a steak dinner, and he just proved to me that the kid's the real deal. So when they hung up the phone, the coach literally looked at me and he goes, I'm not joking. We're actually looking at an NFL quarterback and what that looks like in high school. He's watching it right now. He's like, that is what that looks like. You hear the stories, the Joe Burrows, the Patrick Mahomes, the Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, not so much because he kind of fell off late in his senior year before he became big time. But like the bigger names that are in the NFL, you know, what did they look like in high school? You turn on Noah's film and you see him in person, you're like, oh, that's what that looks like. So if you don't look like that in high school, you're probably not the 1 to 3% that actually make it to the NFL. So that's where that was a really cool compliment when he said that. He still owes me a steak dinner. I don't know if he's trying to back out on that by saying that, but I thought that was a pretty cool deal. So, yeah, Noah Grubbs is the entire package. And like I said, he's got the IQ level. He's got the talent in his arm. He bought in as an 8th grader. He's a sophomore now, so he's already have almost 3 years of development. He is polished as they get. And, I mean, the family around us, the village that we talk about, he's got support everywhere. And that's another big thing when it talks about, you know, being an elite talent. You have to have support. You have to have, you know, the support to go places, to travel, to do that, to go and experience things and go to this camp, to be in front of the right people. And then obviously trainers like myself have to afford those type of deals. And I mean, it takes a lot that Noah has in that village. And then obviously the strength coach, the speed coach, the nutritionist, the chiropractor. I mean, you name it, Noah's got it. And that's why he's elite.
Well, Sean, my follow-up was going to be, how was the steak dinner? But apparently he didn't get it yet. So
we haven't done it yet. He's at Wisconsin now, so I'm still waiting.
So you talk about the packaging that Noah Grubbs represents. I want to go inside that packaging, like open it up for us. Like, when he decides to make a commitment, what is that offensive coordinator, head coach, quarterback coach, when they finally open up that package, what are they going to get that they didn't know they were getting from a Noah Grubbs?
They're getting a future NFL quarterback. We're talking first-round draft pick. We're talking about a kid that knows the regimen of how to be an actual athlete, actually having a good diet, actually going to workouts 2-3 times a day, actually loving the process. Film guy. He calls me on a regular basis just to watch his practice film. I mean, this kid is the entire package when it comes to what you would want from a quarterback standpoint, from a recruiting standpoint. So he brings all that and much more. He's a strong Christian kid, so you don't have to worry about him ever being a problem in a program. You know, he's got obviously both mom and dad in the picture, so they're always on top of him and making sure he's doing the right thing. And here's another side note. Here's what really separates himself from a lot of the kids I train. He's the youngest of 4 brothers. So when you're the youngest and you've been beat up your whole entire life, you start to learn how to be the alpha. A lot of kids that are at the top, they learn to be alpha really quick, and they just assume that's what they are because of the oldest. When you see a lion and you got scars and he's the alpha, you know he's been through wars and he's ready for whatever life brings you. That's Noah. He's been beat up. He's got 3 brothers that were all athletes. His dad was an athlete in college, so he learned how to take it all the time as a kid growing up and always being compared and always being, you know, looked at as a little bro. And then finally, now he's the tallest of all of them. Now he's 6'4". You know, now he's the alpha. Now he showed like, hey, look, you guys molded me into who I am today. Now I'm going to benefit from that and use that as experiences in my leadership qualities and how I am as a matured young adult, as a 16-year-old on the football field. So a lot of the guys that I train are the oldest, or they're the only son in the family, or the oldest son. He's the youngest of 4. So that really helps when it talks about building a kid and finding the it factor on why you are motivated to be the best you can be, because you're always being compared by your older brother. So now he is what they would consider the alpha, because he is completely taken over. As far as not saying the alpha, I'm sure they think that they can beat him up still, which I doubt. But I'm just saying from how you carry yourself and how you live your life as the alpha. He has learned to be that by being the little bro, as you would say.
Well, Baylin, we've been lucky enough to have Brady Hart come on this show before. So Cocoa Star quarterback Brady Hart, listed 6'4" plus. He told us last time he was on, he was more in the 190 to 195 pound range at that point. Give us some insight on him. Brady, for me, is just kind of makes everything look very easy on the football field. What's kind of your scouting report, I guess, for lack of a better term, on Brady?
Yeah, Brady Hart. So I say Noah is the generational talent. I call Brady the freak. This kid, he's about 6'5" now. I wouldn't say he's 6'4". He's about 6'5", just like Noah. And he's about 190, I would say 192 pounds. So, yeah, he's gained some solid weight in the offseason. He has completely flipped his body, too. I mean, we talk about Noah. Brady did the exact same thing. I mean, he was 165, 170 pounds soaking wet last year, winning a state title, getting beat up every game. I mean, now he's the solid 6'5", 190, hopefully 195 pounds soon. Freak, and the kid has everything. I mean, he could run, he could throw. He's smart. He's getting taught under a head coach that was a high-level quarterback at UCF, and Coach Snyder. Coach Franco's been there a long time as an OC, so he's learning the game, and he picks things up very fast. He processes things very fast, whereas Noah has a lot of experience learning the game. Brady's learning it now, and he's retaining it and processing it. And we talk about the ceiling. Brady hasn't even come close to his ceiling. So that's what excites me about Brady. And here's a little side note when we talk about little scouting report on Brady. He was actually a defensive player growing up. He loved hitting people. He was a linebacker, defensive end. He played defense in the youth football, and he just wanted to hit people. So when you see his tape now and the punishment that he took last year and was able to stay in the pocket, especially against like St. Thomas Aquinas, who's top 10 in the country, and he threw 500 yards, 5 touchdowns against them, should have beat them, arguably a very big controversy there. There was games like that where you're like, how is this kid able to just stand there and take this punishment? Well, he used to be the one delivering it. So that kid is just special. And like I said, he's a freak of nature because he can run with his 6'5" frame. He understands his body, and his ball is flawless. He has no hitch in his throw. He was also a baseball kid. His dad was a baseball American in Florida, so he knows what the pro regimen looks like. So along with Noah and now he has a village, Brady also has one as well. So Brady, he knows what it takes to be a professional athlete because he watched his dad. And his parents support him in everything that he does, which is why he started coming to me in his 8th grade year as well. His dad, he's like, hey, he has passion for quarterback. And so he handed the keys over to me. And I remember it was not the first time, but gradually, I think within the first month or two, I broke him down so hard that I'll never forget, we were in Lake Nona, and he looked at me, and I saw, and his dad was in the car. He's like, I can't watch this anymore. His dad walked off. He went into his car, and Brady looked at me, and I looked him straight in the face. And, dude, I'm talking, I dead in the face. I said, Brady, the day you take this dang game serious is the day you'll be the best quarterback in the country. But until then, you're going to still look like this. And I'll never forget, dude, he looked at me, and it was almost like he was about to cry. And from that moment, I'll never forget, that moment, it was like something just clicked in him. And ever since then, he's been one of the hardest working kids I've ever met. He takes it serious. He's obviously now top 5 in the country. Top 10 in 24/7, top 5 rivals. I mean, the kid is just an elite talent. And I think one person said it best recently. I talked to Michigan and I talked to Clemson recently. Michigan looks at him like the next J.J. McCarthy, which he has all the talent to be because he has the arm talent. He's a freak of nature. Then you have Coach Spiller from Clemson who called me, and he said, look, this kid looks like Trevor Lawrence. So you have both of those comparisons to Brady's game because he is the 6'5" frame, but he's also very athletic. And so that's what a lot of these colleges like about him is he's able to be that pocket guy, but he's also able to escape with his feet when needed, and he makes easy or hard throws look easy on the run. So that's what Brady brings to the table. Again, he has the pro dad in his life. He has me as his trainer. He has a great head coach, a great offensive coordinator, Coco. Obviously has talent around him like Javon Boggs, who's also being heavily recruited by Notre Dame right now. I mean, we're talking, he's got all the formulas to be special. And part of the reason why he's at Coco is because I bet on him. After molding him for a year, I said, look, the only way you're going to ever be on that big stage is by being at a big program. And he was at Melbourne High at the time, which is, they're a good program, but not at the elite level like Coco is. And so I said, you got to bet on yourself. It was a conversation we had with his parents, and they pulled the trigger on it, and it was the best thing for him. He's now a state champion as a sophomore, and I guarantee you he's probably going to win 2 more and have 3 by the end of all this. So he's headed to elite heights at this quarterback position. Like I said, he's very new to retaining the game information from an IQ standpoint. He still played quarterback as a youth football player, still ran the spread offense as a youth kid, but he was more of a defensive guy. He loved hitting people. Now he's kind of turning the tables, and now he is what he is. He's a top 10, top 5 quarterback in the country.
Love it. Well, Baylin, you gave us so much great time and so much great information. Before you go, if you could please just plug anything you want to plug, your quarterback training, obviously, all your social media handles, anything you want to leave the folks with, because we really appreciate your time today, man.
Yeah, quarterbacks, if you're listening, you got to get a trainer. You got to get a trainer with connections. Do your research. You have to do your research. Don't just pay somebody just to get you training. Get actual training that's going to help you further your game, because a lot of people are missing that. They're training with guys who may have played at the next level. That doesn't give you credibility, or may have, had good relationships. At the end of the day, relationships are great, but the relationships that matter are the ones that your trainers and your coaches have with the colleges that's going to get you those opportunities. So I take pride in that. I market all the kids I train. So if you watch my social media, especially on Twitter and Instagram, at Baylin Trujillo, you're going to see I market all the kids. That's what your trainers should be doing. So if you can't get to me, or if you're in other parts of the country, make sure your trainer or your coaches are marketing you. That's the only way these colleges are going to get to see you. Every kid brags about themselves. So colleges aren't looking at the kids that post their stuff and put their stats and stuff. That's all great. But at the end of the day, that's what you're supposed to do as a kid. You have to have an outside source that's reliable, that's going to put their name on you to make you at that level that you want to get to. So that's just my advice for the quarterbacks. Parents, you can always reach out to me. I got people that fly all over the country to come train with me. Even just yesterday on Mother's Day, had a kid from Virginia, had a kid from Alabama, had a kid from Seattle. So like they're coming from all over. So if you want to make it happen, you're gonna have to buy into the program, buy into your kids, buy into the process. You have to do it to get to where you want to go, just like these kids did. Like I told Noah and Brady both. I said, look, you put the baseball down, you focus solely on quarterback, you will be at the top, because you have to treat this position like it's the only thing that matters to you. Nothing else can take you away from this game when you play this position. It's the hardest position in all sports, and that's what they both did. And look, both of them are 3 and 4 in the country. So, we're talking top of the country at their position. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist. It just takes a lot of work, and you have to be willing to go through the grind and the process and through it all, because at the end of the day, if you want to be a Division I athlete, you got to prepare yourself that way. And that goes again with your training, your dieting, your stretching, your chiropractic, your the way you watch film. Everything matters from this point on. It doesn't matter. You never start too young. My son is 22 months old right now. Name is Grayson. Little plug there, Grayson Kane. And I have him throwing a ball every single day. Whether he knows what he's doing or not, I'm showing him the form, and I'm grabbing his arm. He's doing this every time. Hold the finish. Hold the finish. I put his stuff out on social media for everybody to see. It's not rocket science. These kids are a sponge. They learn and they gravitate information, and that happens at every age. So if I could teach my son at 22 months how to throw a freaking spiral, I guarantee you at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you can do the same thing. The funniest thing and the best thing I love is when parents come to me and says, hey, my kid's 12 years old. Do you think it's too early? You're too late. That's the problem. So make sure you get on top of it early and bet on yourself, and always keep God first no matter what you do, and get a village around you. Get people that support you. That's going to help you achieve your dreams, because at the end of the day, we all need that support, whether we're in the profession or not, playing or not, it doesn't matter. And no matter what we do, we need support. Just like this podcast needs support from the fans, players need support from their parents and the coaches and the trainers around them.
Go support him on Twitter, on Instagram, Baylin Trujillo. Baylin, I really appreciate it again, man, so much. Whoever ends up as the quarterback for Notre Dame in 2026, have to have you back on to talk about it again, man. Really appreciate your time.
Let's do it. I appreciate you guys. God bless, man. Go Irish. And I can almost confidently say you might possibly get one of the guys sooner rather than later. So that's just for you guys to figure out. All these guys have awesome opportunities. Noah has 25 offers. Brady has, I believe, 19 or 20 offers. Awesome programs. A lot of some of the same schools, like I said, are fighting for both these guys, just like Notre Dame. I would say Miami, Michigan are up there as well. They're really hard on both of those guys. But like I said, I believe in what Notre Dame's doing. I have a really good relationship with all these guys and all these coaches, especially with Notre Dame as well. And it's just an opportunity and an honor, really, for these two kids to really be talking about one of the most prestigious programs in all of college football history. So it's just been a pleasure to be along the process and help them guide through this process. But, man, just to think and put in retrospect that Notre Dame is wanting two of my guys, that's just, it speaks volumes, man. So all credit to them, because at the end of the day, I can tell them the answers. They still got to go out there and perform. Just like all the athletes that are listening now, hey, we can have all the connections we want, but if you're not performing, you're never going to get those opportunities. So don't look at me if you're not putting up big numbers every single game. It has to be consistent. That's just the reality of it. So you want to be that guy, be that guy.
Well, everyone loved you, Baylin, because we got people offering to buy you a steak dinner just to hear you keep talking ball. So we'll definitely have you back on, brother. Thank you so much, and have a great day, okay?
Appreciate you guys, man. God bless. Take care, man.
Absolutely. There he goes. Baylin Trujillo. Sean. Somebody said it in the chat. But that guy could talk, and he talks some great ball, man. Some great insights to both Brady Hart and Noah Grubbs. That was a great interview, guys. I hope you guys really enjoyed that so much. He gave you obviously a lot of insight, not only into the physical, the developmental, but also the personal, right? Which obviously matters a lot for quarterback, Sean.
Yo, great interview. Now I have to take a sit back after we get done with the show, and I'm gonna watch film of both again, because I already know from watching film, we had a chance to talk. I haven't had a chance to speak to Noah. I had a chance to interview Brady. I'm gonna sit back and see where this settles for me. I'm gonna give it one more shot and come to my final conclusion on the guy that's gonna be at the top of my list.
Yep.
But we said this months ago when we found out the top 7 or 8 guys they had on their board.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't care. I mean, I have a preference.
Yeah.
But if any of these guys end up in Notre Dame, I'm a happy man. I'm definitely a happy fan on that day. You know what it made me think about listening to Baylin?
What's that?
How the hell were we evaluating the quarterback position before Marcus Freeman's regime? What the
Sean.
heck?
Sean.
Ryan, I'm sorry, man. It just takes
me.
What the heck were we looking at? Did
we
have that Vandy type of mindset? That the head coach had, they got the phone call like, well, that guy, he's not going to come to Notre Dame. Like,
Sean,
a wasted offer.
Two quick tidbits on that, because I think it's a fantastic question. It really is. So one, Brian posted an article at boards.irishbreakdown.com. I believe it's also live at irishbreakdown.com on Athlon. Okay. That was highlighting Noah Grubbs as a talent, right? And his title was something to the effect of Noah Grubbs has elite upside, right? Like to that degree. And someone commented on in there and was like, guys, I don't know what to do. This is not what I'm used to for Notre Dame quarterback recruiting. And I'm like, isn't that crazy to think about? I mean, because Baylin just said it. Notre Dame is a upper echelon tier of college football history, right? And one of the best programs in all of college football from every aspect of it. And this is new to us for some reason, right? And then somebody else, and shout out to Mike Goolsby on Twitter, Sean, because he had said something about Tommy Rees, and whether we like Tommy or we didn't like Tommy as an offense coordinator, that's neither here nor there. This is just a conversation of. So his argument was this, though. He had said that he thought Tommy was a great play caller, okay? And then someone said, like, what are you talking about? He's like, guys, did we see what he did with a 5'9" quarterback his last year here? And I'm like, that's so disrespectful. But like, Sean, it's not fully incorrect, though, is it? I mean, like, let's think about it, man. In a multi-year span, you saw, and Tyler Buckner was obviously a very talented kid who didn't pan out, right? But littered in there were guys like Drew Pine. And all respect to Drew Pine for a second for what he did, right? When you stand Drew Pine next to CJ Carr, Kenny Minchie, Deuce Knight, and potentially Brady Hart or Noah Grubbs, he doesn't look like he belongs in the same room. Like physically, he just does not look like he belongs at all. So yeah, man, it's different. Someone just said Brandon Clark in the chat. Like at least Brandon Clark had a strong arm though. But like, yeah, I understand though, right? Like I understand the sentiment there is that the Notre Dame quarterbacks that have been recruited the last couple years and since Marcus Freeman took over, it's different than what we're used to. It's different than what we're used to. We're not used to this, Sean. We have to get used to it because it's changing, man. It's changing.
Look, man. Evaluation is something that I do at a lower level. It's something that you have done at a higher level, college and going into the NFL draft. I just don't get it. The difference is such a stark difference in how one head coach and his staff say, this is what we have to get. And it was almost like, because even going back to, you might have seen more talent, but the only outlier in the previous regime was probably the one guy that eventually ended up getting drafted in the second round. Even though he didn't pan out in the NFL, he was really the only outlier from just the size, skill. Yeah. He was the one that was not the typical recruit at quarterback.
Right.
Because everyone else was like 5'11", different types, but
Right.
still him and Phil. I think him and Phil were pretty much the big body types.
They're big guys.
They were a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
And that's crazy, man. Now when we see this quarterback room is just like 6'4", 6'5", 6'5", it's like, okay, they're shooting for quarterbacks that are going to shake Roger Goodell's hand. Like that's what they're shooting for.
Sean, we talked about it on Pot of Gold Day, right? Where for the 2026 class that we're obviously talking about right now, the shortest guy on there is a verified 6'2", like verified. The shortest guy is Ryder Lyons, who's a legit 6'2", not like a listed 6'2", but actually 6.5 feet, like legitimately 6'2". Everybody else is 6'5", George McIntyre, 6'4" plus Brady Hart, 6'4", 6'5", Noah Grubbs, Will Griffin, 6'3", Brady Smigel, who is 6'5". Like everyone's tall, everyone looks the parts. And Sean, I just think it's a different era. Like it's just different now, man. Like look, quarterback development is a completely different conversation, right? Because now we need to see, can you take Kenny Minchie and CJ Carr and Deuce Knight when he gets here in 2025 and turn them into elite players? That's the next question we have to answer here, right? But the acquisition of quarterback talent is night and day. It is not even the same world. I mean, literally, I was writing down some notes as Baylin was talking, Sean, because he was talking about like a lot of the sizes that the guys are now and all that type of stuff. Literally, if he's correct that both are right around 6'5", right? 6'5" each. One's 193, one's 192. So you're getting a not a carbon copy because both are completely different quarterbacks in the vacuum, but you're getting a similar size profile. You're getting a guy that's going to be 6'5" and is going to put on a lot of weights. You know, he talked about how Noah had lost some weight. He was up at 228 pounds, had lost some weight, cut down body fat, only 8%. But when he hits the strength and conditioning program, if he chooses Notre Dame, let's say, Noah Grubbs is going to be 220 again, but he's just going to be a really good 220. You know what I mean? Like he's going to be a really good 220. So fantastic conversation, which will lead us into a lot more quarterback talk. I know Baylin dropped a little bit of hint there that, you know, Notre Dame's in a pretty good spot with both players. So like there's a reality where if one of those kids pulls the trigger soon, Notre Dame's kind of the team to beat for both of them. Right. So Baylin Trujillo, make sure you follow him on Twitter. Again, it's BAYLIN TRUJILLO. I believe it is the same on Instagram as well. Make sure you go follow him. Sean, you ready for some 2025 talk though, man? We're going to get rolling here, folks. We're going to do a little bit of a confidence check-in on some 2025 players that are still on the board for the University of Notre Dame. Before we do, hit that like button. Make sure you're sharing the podcast. Make sure you hit that notification bell and that like button at the bottom of the screen. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, make sure you're subscribed over there and leave a 5-star review. Boards.irishbreakdown.com had some recruiting intel I dropped this morning on a certain 2026 wide receiver that is pretty dang high on the University of Notre Dame. So any latest team and recruiting intel as we get into official season here in June, make sure boards.irishbreakdown.com is where you sign up today. We're going to talk next confidence meter for the 2025 class for Notre Dame here on the Irish Breakdown podcast. Sean, I think it's only right that we split this up offensively and defensively. Okay. So we're going to talk about the latest with top targets on the offensive side of the ball here to start for the 2025 recruiting class for University of Notre Dame. Because sitting here in May, it's May, right? It's May. It is May. Yep. These months are dragging along, man. They're kind of working themselves together. They are. Yeah. We're almost at June, though, which official visit season, as we know, it's going to be busy, guys. It's going to be super busy. So we want to give you guys a confidence meter working towards the end of this month into a very important month of June, where we'll have official visitors every single weekend and most times during the week as well. We'll talk about a lot of those guys as we move forward there. But let's talk 2025 offensive class here, Sean. We're going to work through pretty much everyone that is on the board, okay? Everyone that's on the board for Notre Dame offensively. So obviously, don't have to spend any time at quarterback. We know who the quarterback is at the University of Notre Dame in the 2025 class. It's Mr. Deuce Knight. Don't have to, We'll spend a little bit of time at running back here to start, and then we'll work our way to wide receiver and then an offensive lineman that's still on the board. Let's start with James Simon, Sean, who's out of Calvary Baptist in the state of Louisiana. 6 foot, 190 pounds, 195 pounds, elite player out of Calvary Baptist, ran for over 1,600 yards in a very talent-filled competition level in the state of Louisiana. He visited Notre Dame very recently, Sean, and there's a possibility. I had an interview at IrishBreakdown.com a few weeks ago when he had visited Notre Dame for the second time, and there is a possibility that he could take an official visit to Notre Dame as well as we get closer to the month of June. So, Sean, here's where we are, and it's a very interesting point, okay, is that Notre Dame doesn't need a running back in 2025 class as we stand today, right? You have Justin Thurman, who's a speedster out of the state of Florida. You also have Daniel Anderson out of Arkansas, who's been on the show. We literally interviewed him. Awesome kid, by the way. You have 2 running backs. You don't need another running back in this class. But here's the thing, Sean. I know we've both watched James Simon's film, right? We both have seen James Simon's film. And do you need James Simon? No. Do you still want James Simon? Heck yeah, why wouldn't you? He's a really good player, man. Of course you still want James Simon, right? So Notre Dame is still pushing there, Sean. We're going to kind of work this way. It's a confidence meter from 0 to 10. 0 being no, there's no chance. They're not talking to him anymore. It's over. 5 is it's a 50-50 kind of conversation. Like it could go a couple different ways, but like Notre Dame is still in it. And then obviously, if we're talking about a 10, that means that they're committed. So we're not going to say a 10 here, right? In case there is a player that might be silently committed. Who knows? But if we're trending towards an 8 or a 9, that means that we think Notre Dame is the heavy favorite to land that player overall, right? So confidence meter for me, and I'll hand it off to you, Sean. Look, Notre Dame has done a tremendous job with James Simon. He speaks very highly of Dylan McCullough. And obviously, he has gone to Notre Dame twice on his own dime. Sean, you just traveled. You know how much traveling costs. Traveling is not easy. It is not the easiest thing in the world. It's expensive. He's done it twice on his own dime. So obviously, it's not a 0. There is a slight chance there. But for me today, and I would love to hear your perspective on it, for me today, we're about a 2, right? Maybe a 3 if we're pushing it that way. Notre Dame has a puncher's chance, but today I still feel really good about where Texas is, where James Simon. LSU is obviously a school that's going to continue to push for James Simon because he's right in their backyard. But I think Texas is kind of the heavy favorite right now for Mr. Simon. So Notre Dame doesn't have no chance, but I think it's still very low because, hey, man, they gave it the best they could. But ultimately, I just think that there's a couple other schools that might still be a little bit more appealing for James Simon.
Long term, with a recruit like this, the scratch might be worth the sniff down the road, right? You lose big time guys in the 23 class in the state of Florida, but 2 years later now, Notre Dame is having great success in the state of Florida, right? So you're laying foundation. This is what I call an infrastructure recruitment, right? It goes to the fact that, no, we don't need him, but guess what? Our coach has built a great relationship, so let's just go ahead. Because if we do swing and hit, and we hit a home run, then great. Like, it's almost like wealthy people, like they never say they have enough money. So you have a wealth of riches in the running back room, but just because you have a wealth of riches, you're not going to take quite possibly one of the top running backs in the class if he wants to come to Notre Dame. And even if he decides to go to Texas, you were in the running. And the waves, they ripple throughout recruiting, not just within one class. We're talking about 2 to 3 classes down the line, in particular geographical locations and regions. And so don't think that running backs in the state of Louisiana in the 26th class, 27th class, they're watching. The young kids are watching. They're seeing the news. James Simon, they're seeing it on Instagram when he posts. Oh, James Simon, what's up with Coach McCullough? Like, why is James Simon going to Notre Dame again?
Sean, you know what it's like? You remember the 2023 class when Notre Dame got that random official visit from Richard Young, right?
Yes.
Where it was like, man, Richard Young's not going to Notre Dame, but like, it's still it still means something that Richard Young took an official visit to Notre Dame, though. It still means something. We might just kind of look past and be like, oh, it doesn't matter. They didn't get him. BS. That's BS. It does matter. It 100% matters. They pulled an official visit out of their behinds for a player that we had not even had any much connection to. But this one's different, obviously. James Simon's been to Notre Dame twice. So they get him back for an official visit. That'll be 3 visits to Notre Dame. So even if they don't end up getting him, and again, confidence is very low there that he ends up at Notre Dame, it still says something to Dylan McCullough. It still says something to Notre Dame recruiting. That still matters, man. It still 100% matters. No doubt.
And it's something that bears watching. So like you said, if they get this official visit, that's even greater. Let me tell you something, man. Hearing from Baylin and what he feels about the direction and the trajectory of Notre Dame under Marcus Freeman and his conversation, his relationship with the coaches, oh, that's a well that Notre Dame can go back to 3, 4, 5 years down the line. Matter of fact, they're going to know about the kids that are 7th and 8th graders because of the relationship they built with Baylin.
Yeah.
And so this is recruiting. It's all about cultivating relationships, digging in roots
$1,000,000,000%.
with family, people, trainers, coaches, schools. This is what Notre Dame under Marcus Freeman is doing at a much more efficient and effective way than we've seen in the last 10, 15 years at Notre Dame. Now, maybe it has not bared itself out as far as actual rankings when it comes to a class on National Signing Day. We believe that's going to change in the 25 class. We think finally Notre Dame is going to have a top 5 class on National Signing Day that the fan base can look at and say, man. And if you line that up with wins and playoff runs, now you're cooking with what we call fish grease. That's one of the hottest greases you can cook with. So,
is it?
Yeah, bro. You don't want to dip your finger in fish grease, bro. You don't want to do that. But no, it is absolutely amazing what it represents. That's what we should pull from the recruitment of James Simon, what it represents. And Notre Dame is really recruiting from a wealthy place, which is what top programs do, right? When people say, yo, you have this quarterback, why do you go get a Deuce Knight? Well, you have Deuce Knight. Why do you go get a Brady Hart or a Noah Grubbs? Because we can. It's like,
seriously, yeah.
Because we can.
Yeah. It's almost like a flex a little bit, isn't it? I mean, like, honestly, and it's an important flex. I mean, if I'm because Sean, what was the big deal about, and I know we're getting a little bit off topic a little bit, but you talk about Notre Dame this offseason with locking up Al Golden, getting Mike Denbrock to come, making the expansion of the football facilities. What is all that, Sean? Getting Chad Bowden away from Michigan, who had heavy interest in him, right? Yeah. They're flexing, man. They're saying we're here, guys. We're here. We're not backing down from any of these.
And what have fans been asking for?
Yep.
Use that money in clout.
Yes.
Use it. Yes. Be the bully that you can be. And now that they're doing it, it has to be a great feeling for the fan base.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. So, Sean, if you had to put a number on it, again, I was a 2, maybe a 3. So I'll say 2.5 just for argument's sake, right? On James Simon. Do you have a number of a confidence level?
That's fair.
It's fair. Okay.
That's fair.
We're about on the same. I feel like we're on the same wavelength with that one, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right. So let's now go to the wide receiver class, Sean. So we're going to talk about 4 different receivers here. Okay. And then we'll end with an offensive tackle for the offensive class here for the University of Notre Dame. Okay. So as of today, Notre Dame has 3 wide receiver commits in 2025. 1, Jerome Bettis Jr., Sean Terry, and Elijah Burris. Those are the 3 wide receiver commits. There is still a spot for at least 1 more, possibly 2, if the right 2 want to come. Okay. So let's work through this, Sean. Derek Meadows, star receiver out of Las Vegas, Nevada, Bishop Gorham. Okay. 6 foot, 5 or 6, whatever he ends up being, 200 pounds, ran 4.5 flats at Notre Dame, not this past offseason, the offseason before, as a rising junior at that point. So height, weight, speed, dude. Production is not quite there yet, but we've talked about it. We saw him at Battle Miami. The upside is silly. Like, if he is able to develop, he is a tremendous athlete and a tremendous talent. Okay. So this one's very, very interesting, Sean. I kind of laid it out like this recently. Okay. Notre Dame, Washington were the two teams that were leading the pack for a long time. Then Kalen DeBoer left Washington for Alabama, and Derek Meadows didn't have an offer from Alabama. So Notre Dame at that point was the de facto leader by default. Mm-hmm. But I've talked about this a long time. Derek hasn't been in commitment mode. So anytime you leave it open, other teams can come in, right? So I've talked about Damian Shanklin in the past, Sean, as far as like I felt like Notre Dame's status with Damian Shanklin for a long time as their leader, quote unquote, was a placeholder for him. Like he was waiting for more offers. He was waiting for Ohio State. He was waiting for a couple others. Eventually those guys came and Notre Dame got cut out of the picture, basically. I don't think it's the same for Derek Meadows. I wouldn't say that Notre Dame was ever a placeholder for Derek. I do think that Derek had heavy interest in Notre Dame, and I still think he does have interest in Notre Dame. But where we are now is Alabama and a couple of those other schools that have offered after his performance at Battle Miami. They have now come into the picture, and I feel like those teams are trending in a great direction, while Notre Dame is just kind of steadily trending downward. Okay, so as of today, and again on this scale, 0, it's over with. Don't even talk about it anymore. 5, you got like a 50-50 chance of potentially getting him. And then obviously we're working towards an 8 and 9. We feel that Notre Dame is the absolute leader for a player, right? I would give this a 4 right now, Sean. It is not dead in the water, okay? It is not over with, but I do believe that it is a slightly worse than a 50-50 split of a chance. I do think that some other schools are now leading for Derek Meadows, but I do think that they're still fighting. So if they get him back on campus, he has a great official visit. Maybe they can recapture the lead. Maybe they can make some magic happen there. But as of today, I would not pick Derek Meadows to be in the class for Notre Dame. I do think that things are trending a little away from Notre Dame as of today.
And I think that's a pretty good assessment. I think that was something that we always worried about, and you always worry about anytime early in the process, because Notre Dame has to get into recruitment mode and commitment mode early. Like that's the way they're going to structure their program. That's the way they're going to structure their recruitment. And it needs to be that way. We know why, because it's different recruiting at Notre Dame. They don't have the luxury. Maybe if they win a couple of championships or win a championship, that luxury will begin to come where they can get in on kids a little bit later and kind of pair that with the pedigree and the academics of Notre Dame and the brand itself. But as we stand today, they have to get in early in kids and they have to take the lead, right? If you are a horse racer, if you are a jockey on a horse, you want to get out in front. If you're Notre Dame in this race, when it comes to recruiting, you want to get out in front and see coming down the home stretch if you can hold on with that last kick you have, right? And, you know, schools like Alabama and Georgia, they're the guys that just want to be middle of the pack, and then they have that kick and they want to play. So now it's all about the jockeying route. Now we get to see what this coaching staff is really about in recruiting, right? Because every staff has different styles. Every school has a plan of how they want to attack kids like a Derek Meadows. And now we see if Notre Dame has that close. See if they can hold on, because other schools are coming on. Maybe they nose ahead a little bit. Can you respond? You know, when another horse is looking you in the eye, now we get to see the heart of that particular horse and that jockey and what they have. And this is, you know, this is big time recruiting. Notre Dame fans, this is what comes with that. Like, yo, getting in on kids like Derek Meadows, like, hey, it's a roller coaster ride. 50-50, you felt good once before. The next month, you might not feel as good, but guess what? You're still in it. You still have a chance. Let's see what you have. Let's see what your coach has. Let's see what the staff has. And that's what we're going to check out in this recruitment. But we're going to talk about some other kids that, hey, you know what? Notre Dame might have the trifecta, if you will. That if we miss out on first place with this kid, we might be able to come in with some other kids in this class that might make you just as happy.
Well, it's funny you say that, Sean, because the 4 wide receivers we're talking about in this section, I would say Notre Dame is trending downward with a couple, but trending upward with the other 2, right? So it is just a very interesting dynamic between this group, right? So that's Derek Meadows. Again, Notre Dame has a chance. They still are fighting. They're still in the top group. It's just going to come down to whether you can impress down the stretch and you make a big move, hopefully with an official visit. That's what you really have to hope for, because as of today, again, would not pick Derek Meadows to Notre Dame, but they're still within shouting distance, at least, where it's not dead in the water. Let's go to Geneva, Chicago, community wide receiver, Taylon Taylor Sean. This is one where I feel I'm going to say something, and I want to see if you agree with this, okay? This is my assessment. A confidence level, right? 0 to 10. I'd say it's a 2 or a 3, okay? I'd say it's a 2 or a 3, which again, it says to you all out there listening, not good chances, which I think is a fair assessment right now. I think Georgia is the absolute leader for Taylon. And then obviously Ohio State is a big school for him as well. But Notre Dame is one of the top 3 schools for Taylon Taylor. So there's not no chance. There is a chance. I'd probably bump it to a 3. I'll say a 3, not a 2. I think 2 is a little disrespectful. So you still have a chance, right? And who knows? Maybe he comes back to the official visit and there's a moment where it just says, Notre Dame is kind of always it, right? Because Notre Dame has recruited him for a long time. Notre Dame has done a good job with Taylon Taylor, in my opinion, even through a coaching change and some sporadic wide receiver play. Like, I still think they've done a pretty good job with him. But Sean, this is what I would say. I think Georgia's the leader. And I think that if it ultimately happens sometime after OVs, and as long as Georgia maintains that, I think that this who is a clown in the chat? I'm just trying to make sure that no one's talking about me. Oh, okay. I know who they're talking about now. Sorry. Got it. So very easy to find who they're talking about in the chat. So Taylon Taylor, Sean, I would say it like this, and tell me if you agree or disagree. I would say that Notre Dame is coming in second or third for Taylon Taylor right now. Georgia would be my pick more than likely. Okay. He's my pick more than likely. But I would say this, and this is a little bit from intel. This is also just me kind of reading the room a little bit. So it's a little bit of a combination of speculation and non-speculation. I do think that Taylon Taylor's one, Sean, that Notre Dame will keep pushing for, even if he commits to another school. And I do think, this isn't always true, but I do think that he's one where if Notre Dame has a big year on offense and there's a wide receiver or two that do break out, let's say a Chris Mitchell has 900 yards and he's making big plays and big moments. Maybe a Bo Collins has a big year, Jaden Greathouse, like combination of the 3, whatever. I do think that they're one that they could keep pushing and maybe make some magic happen late with the Taylon Taylor. I think that Taylon, for me, just again, reading the room, I think he likes Notre Dame a lot for what they offer, but he also wants to play wide receiver in the NFL. I think that's what is the end all for him right now, as far as development and trying to get to the National Football League. So I do believe, though, if he doesn't pick Notre Dame this summer, I do think there's a world, Sean, where they could stick on him and something could happen late if they have a big season offensively. But I think what they do this fall is really going to showcase a lot of whether Notre Dame can make a push in the end, if that makes sense. I do think that reality is out there potentially. They just have to show that they can develop wide receivers and that they can sport a dynamic offense that creates some explosive plays.
When you talk about with a Chicago kid like Taylon, you talk about the things that give you pause, right? Because it's quite evident why Notre Dame would be and should be a top 3 offer for a kid like him. We say this all the time. What you just talked about, the pecking order, probably is inverted if you leave it up to the people around him. Like, if you want to talk about how the people around him see it, Notre Dame might be 1 or 2 in that pecking order. But then when you start to talk about the young man, and this is what people have to understand, and the mindset of young people is far more advanced when it comes to how they see themselves and how they see their life playing out than I would say in recruiting 10 to 15 years ago. It's where this is a young man that sees himself on the NFL level right now. So this is not just about, the education. This is not just about getting a winning championships. Like, kids are looking beyond that because they know the top 3 schools that they have can give them an education and can give them an opportunity to win championships. But who gives me the best chance to develop myself into a first, second round talent in the NFL? And this is something that goes into what you just said. This is something Notre Dame has to prove at that position. I think Notre Dame has to prove that at the quarterback position. They've already proven it at the O-line position. Heck, we knew we had a first rounder top 10 at O-line going into this draft. Heck, when we got a second rounder, we didn't know we were going to get a second rounder out of it. That just makes the offensive line resume look even better moving forward. And you wonder why offensive linemen have no problem pulling the trigger quickly when it comes to Notre Dame. It's because of that.
Yep.
It's that factor that Notre Dame has yet to attach to the brand and to its recruiting on the offensive side of the ball when it comes to the quarterback and the wide receiver room. And these are the types of things that can make a talent like Taylor, who's just 80 miles away, who most people in the fan base feel like, man, this should be a no-brainer. Why wouldn't the kid want to come to Notre Dame? Why can't Notre Dame get a kid like this? Ohio State has track record. Ladd McConkey was just taken early in the draft. Nobody was thinking about Ladd McConkey coming into the season last year.
And they could take some claim for A.D. Mitchell.
A.D. Mitchell.
Take claim for
the Burton kid.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So, look, the pedigree is there. Notre Dame has to build that pedigree. And kids like Taylor will be early commits down the road. I truly believe that. Some people in the chat were talking about, Taylor might not be a take if Ohio State gets this kid or there ain't no Jamie French.
Maybe not.
That's fine and dandy. But look, at this point, Notre Dame should ignore Ohio State, in my opinion. They should ignore Ohio State. They should be chasing Georgia in this recruiting. Georgia's the team to chase. And you chase Georgia by continuing to stay on this kid, but also by making sure that Geno and Mike Denbrock and Mike Brown do work during the season. Now, we're not forcing it just to recruit a kid. Like, we're developing an offense. But look, that should be easy because this Notre Dame offense has been all about the offensive line and running backs for over a decade. So making a transition, especially the way we feel about the quarterbacks that they have currently in the quarterback room, you have to feel good about Notre Dame being able to show that they are a multifaceted offense now that attracts the likes of Taylor and Derek Meadows to want to come there and want to be a part of what's happening at Notre Dame. That's what you said. Taylor, You can be that first kid. You can be our first kid in the first round. You're that guy. You're the forerunner. You're the one that's going to kick the door down. That's why you should come to Notre Dame. He's just waiting for the proof. And that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Have no problem with that. But that just goes to the work that Notre Dame, look, Mike Brown, I think Notre Dame has an opportunity to do what you said they have an opportunity to do because I think the relationship is stronger with Mike Brown and Taylor.
Well, Sean, and I know that you've spent a lot of time on Lucky Lefty talking about the 2026 wide receiver class. I know you even had CJ Prosise on to break down a little bit of wide receiver film as well. And even if it isn't for Taylor, if Notre Dame has a big season, it is for those 2026 kids, though, right? Because those kids are going to be watching Devin Carter and Jordan Clay and all these fantastic wide receivers that are on the board. They're going to be watching, man. They're absolutely going to be watching. So, yeah, I think a big season could definitely help in the end. But as of today, as far as a preseason decision pending, most likely for Taylor, because I know he talked about July or August was kind of his spot that he wanted to make a decision. I would say that is probably not in the best situation for Notre Dame right now. I think that's trending away. Let's go to a couple positive notes here, Sean. Those first two are a little bit negative on the wide receiver board, but there are positive here, okay? Let's go to Houston, Texas. Dekaney wide receiver Tanook Hines, who visited for the first time a few weeks ago. And, Sean, I don't think things could have gone better for Notre Dame in that visit. I don't think they could have, honestly. Going into that visit, there was like no vibes there as far as like Tanook really being a realistic option for Notre Dame. Like you knew that he at least had a solid opinion of them, but like I don't think he saw himself at Notre Dame. Just don't think he saw himself. Okay. Then he came out of the visit and he could see himself there, Sean. And we talked about the importance of visiting so often, right? For Notre Dame recruits and guys that are from different parts of the country, especially, and obviously him being a Texas kid. was his first time in South Bend, Indiana. First time in the Midwest for the most part. And he got to experience everything for the first time. And this is a young man that's a 10-5 100-meter kid, brings a lot of speed to the table, brings a lot of physicality to the table, brings tremendous upside to the table. Tell me if I'm crazy here. Tell me if I'm crazy. I have to put a number on it. Okay. I have to put a number on it here for confidence level. I would say I'm like at a 7 right now for Tanuk Hines. Get him back for an official. And I think Notre Dame could easily be the team to beat. I think he saw himself so much at Notre Dame, man. He said it himself. I was nervous coming in. I'm not really a super talkative, outgoing person. And the coaches made me feel at home. Almost word for what he said to me. And he said after the visit, Notre Dame is very, very high on my list. I think Notre Dame made a massive move. And going down the stretch here, I feel good about where they are with Tanuk Hines, man. I feel really good where they are.
And as far as supply, I know the Notre Dame and football at large feels like you can go find a running back anywhere, right? We can get a running back anywhere, but there's so much supply at the wide receiver position is so plentiful, right? Where you can get Notre Dame connecting itself to the last two kids we're going to talk about a little bit later in the game, and you watch their film and you say, oh, okay. All right. Yeah. And that was a feeling we had immediately when you reached out to me first and was like, yo, did you check out Tanuk Hines' film yet? I'm like, no. Like, dude, like, where's this kid been? Like, we should have been on him. And for Notre Dame to make the impact that they made for this young man, you're talking about a kid that's from the Houston area, man. Man, when was the last time Notre Dame went and got an offensive kid from the Houston area?
From Houston?
The wide receiver. Oh man, he transferred. Wasn't he from the Houston area? The Texas area?
I'm not sure. Wait, how long are we talking here? How long we go? Maybe somebody in the chat could help us.
It might have been 7, 8 years ago.
7, 8 years
ago. No, Lawrence Keys is from Louisiana, right?
Lawrence Keys is from Louisiana, I believe. Yes, because then he transferred back up to Tulane, right? After he left.
Jalen Guyton was from.
Jalen Guyton was from. Was he from Texas? He may have been from Texas.
Jalen was from. Maybe that's who I was thinking about. I'm like, maybe somebody from the Houston area that I think. Yeah, Allen, Texas. He's from Allen, Texas. I think Allen is.
Don't ask me about geography of Texas, Sean. Do not ask me about geography of Texas on this podcast, please.
Notre Dame has not ventured into that area, skill position-wise. I'll say that at the wide receiver position.
Right.
Yeah. So to make an impact with a kid like that, and for him to see himself at Notre Dame, that's huge, man. That's huge. We just had an article come out with Notre Dame great Jewel Lloyd in WNBA talking about how tough it was for her to adjust to Notre Dame.
Right.
You know, and it's like, yo, Notre Dame, ladies and gentlemen, Notre Dame is a special place. And only special people can really see themselves prospering at Notre Dame. And it is what it is. And for this young man to come in and for the coaching staff to make him feel comfortable and for him to say, I can see myself there. And for you to say you feel like 7 on a confidence scale right now.
Sean, I said it before. Notre Dame, for whatever reason, has really, really ignored Texas for some reason. I don't know why. But there was a 5-year span. I believe it was the last 5 recruiting classes under Brian Kelly. They only had 3 commits from the state of Texas in 5 years, Sean. They did 4 in one cycle, man. Yeah. They did 4 in one cycle. Now, a couple of them haven't worked out, but when we look about Jaden Greathouse and what he's potentially going to do in the 2024 season, get you very excited, right? And now if you're able to get Tanuk Hines in 2025, and then let's say you come back, because I had an update on Jordan Clay, the 2026 wide receiver, earlier on the message board at BoardSideSpring.com. Maybe if you're able to get a Jordan Clay, that's really where the pipelines are created, man. It was great to see what they did in 2023 in Texas. Yeah. They obviously did continue their work in 2024, but make it sure that those pipelines continue. Kedron Young and those guys at some point, because what's the great recruiting tool, Sean? Tanuk Hines comes up to campus. Oh, Tanuk, by the way, this is Jaden Greathouse. He's a Texas guy too. He's probably going to lead us in receiving this year. That's a recruiting tool, man. That's a recruiting tool because you dang well know that Tanu Kynes knows who Jaden Greathouse is. A kid
absolutely.
that was a prolific wide receiver at Austin Westlake and won multiple state championships and had like a 48-game winning streak. You don't think he knows who Jaden Greathouse is? Of course he knows who Jaden Greathouse is. Of course. So continuing that pipeline is huge. Starting that pipeline and maintaining it would be absolutely massive for Texas. So again, I feel good about where things are with Tanu Kynes. I would give it a 7 right now. Sean, do you think any differently? And here's Salty correcting me, Sean. 56-game winning streak for Jaden Greathouse. So sorry, Salty. My bad. So sorry about that one, man. But yes.
No, and by the way, he is out of the Dallas area.
Dallas.
Jalen Guyton was out of the Dallas area.
Gotcha.
So, like, once again, I can't remember the last skill position player that they got out of the Houston area. Because if you're in Texas, you know the Dallas culture and the Houston culture are totally different. Yes. Even though it's a Texas culture, it's two totally different subcultures in the state of Texas.
Yep.
No, but I'm right with you on the confidence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, now let's go to our last wide receiver here, Sean. Very interesting guy. Okay, very interesting. We've talked about Laverne, California linebacker Noah McHale a little bit on the show. I've talked about him a lot because he's one of the linebackers we'll talk in the defensive segment here, Sean. But he plays with a wide receiver in the 2025 class. His name is Dylan Robinson. Okay. Have you watched Dylan Robinson's film, by the way?
Oh, I have.
What was your thoughts on Dylan Robinson?
I watched the first 3 plays and cut it off.
Why is that, Sean? You need to tell the people a little more, man. Why'd you cut it off?
I saw breaking tackles. I saw run after the catch. I saw hands.
Yeah.
Not body catching. I saw hands. Explosiveness. It was like, okay. I like, dude, look, evaluating film doesn't take long. See, people think you just lock up in a room and just watch like hours upon hours of film. Ryan, you know, we watch enough film. When you see it, you see it. It might be the first clip. It might be the second clip. It's like, man, if you want to watch the rest, now you're just looking for tidbits. That's all.
Sean, the best scout I've ever known, who is a very good and thorough scout in the NFL for like 18 years that I know, okay, and was excellent at his job. He once told me, if you don't know if a player is good in 20 plays or not, then you need to stop watching film. You just need to. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. Like, I get that. Yeah. It shouldn't take long. It should not take long to know if a guy is good or not. Now, the nuance to scouting comes a little bit later as far as the more film you watch, the more thorough evaluation you have. And now you can project a little bit more favorably to system fit and role fit and upside and all that type of stuff. But yeah, I agree. Like there's some guys where Jackson Cantwell in the 2026 class, Sean, I watched 5 plays, man. 5 plays. I don't need to watch anymore for the rest of his high school career, unless he just nosedives the final 2 years. Like I don't need to see anymore, man. I just don't. I just don't. So some guys.
And then when you look at the kid's stats, it was like, oh, you run a 4.4 and already you're doing 20 reps on the bench press. Okay. And like, yeah, this kid is rocked up already. Like, okay. All right. I'll take it.
And Jason Smith said, I might like him more than Derek Meadows. And I get that. I get it, right? Derek Meadows is about what he could be in 2027, right? What could he be in 2027? Dylan Robinson's a better receiver right now than Derek Meadows. Like, there's no doubt about it. And Dylan Robinson has a good upside to him. I mean, he is 6'2", 6'3". He's long arms. He's athletic. He might not quite be the physical specimen that a Derek Meadows is, but he's got plenty of upside to him as well. And John, yeah.
Double R, yes. That's what was so special. I think it was the very first play, dude.
Yeah.
Like his arms, he just snags it and he's not slowing down. He's like full speed acceleration. You're right. He plays because of his arm length and his explosiveness. He plays similar to a Derek Meadows without having the same measurables as the Derek Meadows.
Well, and Sean, I think that we need to talk about this because we'll get to the confidence level here because it's a very interesting one. But I think that this was one where Notre Dame said, we finally got eyes on this kid. We've been doing our homework on this kid now for a little bit. And this is going to make it sound not a popular one, but if Notre Dame misses out on Derek Meadows, I feel like Dylan Robinson is the is the plan, right? As far as
Mm-hmm.
what are we going to do next? What's the pivots? Where are we going to go here? And the great thing about Dylan Robinson is, Sean, he's a dang good defensive player too, man. He could legitimately play defensive back in college because actually a lot of teams said, actually, Dylan told me that a lot of teams are recruiting him on the defensive side of the ball. Some are recruiting him on the offensive side of the ball. Notre Dame obviously likes him on the offensive side of the ball, right?
Mm-hmm.
So very interesting player. I had a recent interview with him. I dropped it over the weekend at irishbreakdown.com where I talked about him and just kind of his conversation with Notre Dame. So this leads to the confidence, Sean. I would love for you to reply after this, okay? And just give me your opinion. And if you disagree, if you agree, all that type of stuff, okay? So he talked to me about, first and foremost, he has 4 official visits set up, okay? One is to Washington, one is to Notre Dame, one is to UCLA, and the other is to Kansas. No, not Washington. I think he already took no, he didn't take an official cut. Let me get back to you on that one. So he has one for Kansas, UCLA, Utah, Notre Dame. Those are the 4 officials now. I think that he might be taking an official to Washington as well, but that has not been solidified, okay? So Notre Dame has come in late, but he is a high academic kid that definitely his family is very high on life after football and the academic side of the piece, right? Very high on that side of the coin. Talented athlete, obviously, and Notre Dame has made a big impression on him early on in this recruitment. Now, he already has a visit scheduled. Dropped that over the weekend as well, or actually maybe that was later on Friday. June 7th through the 9th, Dylan Robinson is taking an official visit to Notre Dame. So he will be on campus, Sean. That's a big one for Notre Dame because right now, today, confidence level, I'd give it a 6. Okay. I give it a 6, as in, I think Notre Dame has a good chance here, guys, like a good chance. Now, if he goes to the visit and he has a great visit, I think that we could be skyrocketing this one. And that could be one where Notre Dame is the clear leader without question. Because as of today, he's never been to Notre Dame. This will be his first time on campus. I think that Notre Dame is potentially cruising into the leaderboard right now and has a chance to put an exclamation point and become the absolute leader coming out of the visits. That's what I see right now with the Dylan Robinson.
This is wonderful. Notre Dame fans, it's starting to look like, because most fans in recruiting with Notre Dame at wide receiver were really worried, how is this going to turn out? I'm not so sure about this class. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about 4 athletes at the wide receiver position where you have to feel like, give me 2, any combination of 2 or 4, and you have to feel really good about the collection of wide receivers in the 25 class. And when you talk about Dylan Robinson, I agree. I would actually put him a little bit higher, 6.5. And I think him coming in for a 3-day visit, the 7th, the 8th, and the 9th, lets you know how seriously and how impactful Notre Dame and the impression they've made on him, and how impactful that impression is being, not only with the young man, with his family. Talking about a kid that runs a 4.4, but if I'm not mistaken, his GPA is like a 4.4. And that's crazy, but that's the type of young man he is. So you can go out and get top talent in every position that can assimilate to the Notre Dame culture and the expectations of what's expected from a student athlete at Notre Dame, and pull them in and get them in. And to get this kid, and hopefully get Noah McHale in the class as well, if they can get that dynamic duo to come out of Laverne and end up at Notre Dame has mined the state of California effectively over the last 2 years. And that trend seems to be trending upward in a great trajectory for Notre Dame in the 26 recruiting class, 25 recruiting class as well. You have to love what Notre Dame is doing in the state of Texas, what they're doing in the state of Florida, what they're doing in the state of California. Look, the dividends are starting to roll in for the groundwork that had been laid over the previous 2 seasons. And this kid, I'm going to be honest with you, man. And I said it while you stepped away. I'll take any combination of the remaining 4 that we're talking about in the wide receiver room. And then I'll pair that with something. We said this because we took a pause on Elijah Burris. Yeah. We took a pause on Elijah Burris. I love what I've been seeing from him at camps, the movement, the quickness. We already said he was pretty good at route running. We felt like he could get better. And I think the buzz is starting to pick up. and he looks a little bit bigger, almost like he's grown and picked up some weight. So, like you said, you start to see this is a big summer for these kids because they'll start to get better, they'll start to get stronger and faster. And then we'll see if the production picks up for a kid like an Elijah Burris. But for the 4 kids we talked about, you give me any 2 out of the 4, and I'm good to go. It's almost like the quarterback situation. Like, all right, I'm good. Would I prefer the top 2 as far as rankings? Heck yeah. But if you give me Dylan Robinson and Tanu Hines.
Well, and Sean, I was going to ask you that because I think I had seen some negative interaction on Twitter, and I mean, Twitter is all negative interaction, right? So I guess we shouldn't be new to that one, but I sat back and thought about that a lot more lately because again, I think that we have the 2 best chances right now at Dylan Robinson and Tanu Hines out of the wide receivers on the board. We're not going to talk about Javon Boggs because things are just dead on that one. So if Notre Dame's able to get Tanu Hines and Dylan Robinson, I'm actually be very happy about that. Very happy about that. And if you would have talked to me about that a few weeks ago, I don't think I would have had that same perspective. I don't think I would have because I was so, and I think a lot of Notre Dame fans are probably here, Sean. They are so frustrated with some of the guys that Notre Dame wasn't able to close on, right? So in that reality, let's say if Notre Dame's able to get Dylan Robinson and Tanu Hines, they get the 5 receivers, they want those last 2. That means technically they missed out on Derek Meadows and Taylor Taylor because that was 2 players that they were very high on early and that they were pushing for throughout, and it didn't go their right way, right? They weren't able to close the deal. And I think that that's clouding the vision for some Notre Dame fans because they just feel disappointment now. It's like, oh man, we missed out on those guys. Now we have Tanu and Dylan Robinson. And I think that's the wrong perspective. I think it gives you a very negative connotation to the fact that Dylan Robinson is a really talented athlete, man. Really talented athlete. Tanu Hines is a 10,500 meter guy. It should never be a bad thing when Notre Dame gets a 10,500 meter guy. Never. Never. Because you know what, Sean? That kid competes. That kid can run. Those things, can't teach those things, man. You can't. A kid either is extremely athletic or they're not. They're either extremely competitive or they're probably not. You can get a little bit more competitive with coaching and some people getting up your you-know-whats. But for the most part, man, competitiveness is born. Like you have that. You have that competitive nature in you or you don't. It's not usually manufactured as much. He has those things. Dylan Robinson has that 6'2" long frame that can run well and that can play multiple positions defensively, offensively and defensively. So I believe if you just kind of take your emotions out of it for a second and say, wow, Tanu Hines and Dylan Robinson, that'd be a really nice end to this recruiting class, man. That would be really nice. So take the emotions out.
Yeah.
And if they're able to get those 2 players, I think you feel pretty happy about it, Sean. Because yes, you still have to hope Elijah Burris develops, right? And you still have to hope that Jerome Bettis finds a second gear that we just don't really see on film right now. And you have to hope that Notre Dame's able to use Sean Terry correctly in their offensive structure. But if you're able to get those 2 players, you feel a lot better about Notre Dame wide receiver recruiting. And I feel, honestly, like, so if it ended today and Notre Dame had this 3-man class, I would not feel good about it at all. I'd be like, dang, I don't like that. I don't like that. That's not a great 3-man call. But if they're able to get to 5, I think that you can take a step back and appreciate that, like, they got some really good players down the stretch, and it kind of saved the class for me a little bit in 2025.
And you never know, right? You could, in this class, one of those bottom 3 that you would perceive ranking, because you would rank, I think we all would rank, both of us would rank these 4 guys above the current commits coming into the class.
Yes. Oh, yes. Easily for me. Easily.
Regardless of what the combination would be.
Yeah.
You could get a Lad McConkey out of those 3 guys, right? A guy that, not from a production standpoint, not from a speed standpoint, or heck, from a speed standpoint, kids get to college and all of a sudden they improve by 10. They go from being a 4-5 guy to a 4-4 guy.
And here's Salty in the chat. Salty's guys talking about you can improve quite a bit running. Yes, I was a track coach. I understand that there is technical improvements to the dynamics of running, right, to the technique of running. I get it, Salty, but I'm not turning a 11 flat 100-meter guy into a 10 500-meter guy. Like, I'm not doing that, man. I'm not making those drastic upgrades, right? So, yeah, I
And I
get you,
have a
man.
kid now. I have a kid now that runs track, plays football. Yeah, I'm talking to him, and my encouragement to him, like he's right at 10-9, but he's winning in his conference, right? And I'm telling him, no. Like win, but your focus should be state.
Right.
Because that right there is not winning state. That's not winning state.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're gonna have to shave another 10. And these kids know that. These kids that have aspirations to get to the NFL and to be productive in the college, they know what they have to shave. They know
100%.
the work they have to put in. They know. They know what's going to make them better athletes. So, absolutely coming into a program, like Baylin said, heck, if either one of these kids, once they get to a college and actually get into an actual program consistently, they're gonna rock up. They're gonna get stronger. Their arms are gonna get stronger. It's the same thing with these wide receivers, man. They're gonna get better. So we fully expect that. So I'm not so down on the 3 committed players, but we need some guys in the class that would conceivably be perception-wise are perceived as being better prospects right now.
Right. Yeah. So, folks, that's Dylan Robinson, Benita High School wide receiver out of Laverne, California. Again, we hit on Derek Meadows, Taylor Taylor, Dylan Robinson, Tanu Kynes on the wide receiver board. We hit on running back James Simon. Last guy offensively, Sean, that I don't want to spend too much time on. Georgia has a great offensive tackle in the 2025 class whose name happens to be Josh Petty, who visited Notre Dame a couple of weeks ago for the first time. He also has some interest in maybe taking an official visit, although nothing has been set up as of today. This is a similar boat for me, Sean, in the James Simon conversation. I think Notre Dame did a very good job with with Josh Petty. Excuse me. I think Josh Petty is an elite talent, by the way. I think the kid has high upside, but I just don't think it's going to end up being enough. If they take another visit, we'll see what happens. I would also give that one like a 2 right now. Like I just don't see the Josh Petty thing happening. If he takes an official visit, obviously there's a chance that it happens, but I just don't see him leaving the South. So I don't want to spend too much time on a player that I just don't think is necessarily going to be a player that Notre Dame has a legitimate chance on. But that is Josh Petty out of the state of Georgia.
I agree.
All right. That's all offensive class, folks. That's the remaining targets on the board. If there's any questions about anybody else that we did not cover on the offensive side of the football, throw a super chat on into the show, and then we'll be able to hit on that one. But we're going to talk defensive players here next, so don't leave. We got a whole other segment for you folks, so do not go anywhere. We're talking 2025 defensive targets that are left on the board here next. Before we do, make sure hit that like button for us, subscribe to the podcast, and hit that notification bell. Sean, of course, is the co-host of the Lucky Lefty podcast, so make sure to go over there on that channel as well and like and share and subscribe and do all that great stuff over there as well. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, 5-star reviews are very much appreciated. We just talked about Josh Petty, man. We just talked about him, Nathan. Make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell, and then you don't hit notification bells on the podcast stream, but you can do a 5-star review because it's very much appreciated. Also go to boards.irishbreakdown.com for all the latest recruiting and team intel. But don't go anywhere, folks. So we're talking defensive board in the 2025 class, targets remaining on the Irish Breakdown podcast. Sean, without further ado, we're talking defensive targets left on the board for Notre Dame in the 2025 recruiting class. There's quite a bit here, Sean. So we got more defensive players that are still on the board here compared to the offensive class that we just talked about a little bit. So as of today, recapping the class so far, Notre Dame has commitments at cornerback from Mr. Creed Thomas and Dallas Golden. They also have safety commits from Ivan Taylor and Ethan Long. They have a linebacker commits from Josiah Kia and Anthony Saka. They also have a hybrid linebacker edge player in Dominic Hulak, and they have defensive line commits from Christopher Burgess, Davion Dixon, and Joseph Reif. That is the defensive class as of today. Again, 20 total commits in the 2025 class as we stand here. Don't insult my falsetto, by the way, sir. I've been working on it, okay? I was a singer in a former life. I hope people understand that, okay? Jerks. Stop being jerks. Sean, let's start with the linebacker class because we don't really have defensive linemen to talk about. We've talked about Jalen Wiggins, the player out of Florida that's committed to the University of Florida. Guys, we'll talk about confidence meter on him if he ends up taking a visit to Notre Dame because that's where we'll be able to really tell if things are trending in a positive direction or not. But we're going to spend this conversation on kids that have been to campus or have visits in the future coming back to campus. I think great news that just dropped over the weekend, shown on Sunday. I put out a conversation because I had gotten a message from 2025 Bradenton, Florida IMG Academy linebacker Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, who said, "Hey, I'm going to Notre Dame on official visits." Cool. When you going? July 9th through the 11th. He's coming to, June 9th through 11th. Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng will be back on campus, Sean. So let's talk about him because he's a very interesting player. Okay. Very interesting. 6'2", 210 pounds. Obviously, Sean, I think you might know his brother. I mean, he's a decent player at Notre Dame, as we talked about before. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was pretty dang good, only an All-American linebacker and now one of the better linebackers in the NFL for the Cleveland Browns. So his brother was pretty good at Notre Dame. Now, IMG Academy, which gives people some hesitation and some negativity and some pessimism into this recruitment. Sean, he visited Notre Dame this offseason for the first time. Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng had never been to Notre Dame, and it was great. I remember when he sent me a video of him doing snow angels without any sleeves, and I was like, that's cool. That's really cool because, again, he's a Maryland kid, was at the Matha, but then went down to IMG, so he's a pretty good weather kid, right? And as far as coming up to South Bend and being in the snow, and he talked about how he could see himself there. And it was really a great step in that recruitment, right? Now, there's been some conversation. I know Brian Driscoll has talked about this on the past, Sean. Notre Dame was interested in waiting until the fall to get Nathaniel onto campus because what he's talking about as far as a timeline perspective is committing sometime this fall or in December for National Signing Day. That's his timeline. He is not a summer decision guy. He's a fall decision guy. Okay. So Notre Dame, I was talking about being patient with this one. Well, for whatever reason, he is now coming now for an official visit. I don't know if that is Notre Dame trying to set the pulse or Notre Dame desperation. I don't know what the thought process is behind it. I haven't talked to anybody at Notre Dame about that. I don't truly know. But get him back on campus is still very good. It's a very good sign of things. So he talked to me, Sean, and he had listed, I know he only has 4 official visits set up right now, but I'd asked Nathaniel about schools that he was high on right now. And he obviously Notre Dame, he mentioned Ohio State, who he just visited, Michigan, Florida, Georgia, and USC. Okay. That was the visitors that was the schools that he mentioned. Very different from my conversation with him from a few months ago, because at that point, Sean, he had mentioned Notre Dame and the Florida schools. That was it. It was Miami, Florida, Florida State, Notre Dame. That was the schools he was talking about. Now, out of that list, the only 2 schools that are leftovers from that original list I just talked about are Notre Dame and Florida, which that's a good sign. That means Notre Dame has kind of been on the top board for a while now. It sounds like at least several months. Now, Ohio State, Georgia, USC, especially Ohio State and Georgia coming into the fold, that makes things a little tougher, right? Because those schools recruit at a very high level. There's no doubt about it. As of today, though, Sean, I think this is kind of a coin flip, man. This is kind of a coin flip, I think. I would say a 5 right now. Not that I would necessarily predict Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng to end at Notre Dame today, but I would say Notre Dame has about as good a chance as just about anybody on that list. So I'll say 5 right now. I'll say it's a coin flip. Notre Dame has a chance here, guys. They definitely do. if they have a big visit with him and they're able to maintain their momentum throughout until decision date ends up happening, I think Notre Dame has a chance. Again, it's not like one where I'm like, that's an 8 right now. Like, that's a foregone conclusion. They're the absolute leader. But Sean, I think Notre Dame has a legit chance here. I think they do.
I think they've had a chance from the beginning. I think his interest, outside of him, is not going to base his interest on his success or the success of his brother at Notre Dame the time that he had. But I think what you talked about, like coming in and fully embracing Notre Dame the way he did, and I think that came across in his photo shoot, it left you with a good feeling that, this is bigger than just him and his brother. It's about a relationship. It's about what the Notre Dame defense has shown. And look, once again, we were shocked at the linebackers that Notre Dame placed into the draft and how they were drafted ahead of most projections. So that bodes well for the linebacker position. And we project that the current young linebackers are going to be drafted even higher in the next 2 to 3 years. So he sees the evolution of the linebacker position and the pedigree that's being built by Al Golden and Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame. And so that bodes well for Notre Dame as well. And his brother was a high draft pick coming out of Notre Dame. So Notre Dame always has that feather in his cap that no other program on his list has. USC, I think, because of the coaching changes, comes into the picture now.
That's an interesting one, isn't it, Sean? You never heard about USC at all, but obviously D'Anton Lynn is a very good defensive coordinator coming over UCLA. So that was an interesting inclusion. I think that if I had to pick like out of those 5 schools he gave me, the hierarchy, I'd say USC is at the bottom of that list. But like interesting that USC is starting to get in a little bit more of these battles. I was even looking at the 2026 corners that Notre Dame's going after, Sean. USC has 2 legit 2026 corners committed to them too. So they might be starting to get a little bit more state power and defensive recruiting.
They made the Final Four for what? They made the Final Four for Chuck McDonald. So look, they are trying to they're in recovery mode, right? They're trying to reestablish that dominance they've had in the state of California and out west for a long time. And while they're doing that, teams are still coming in and finding success in the state of California. So this could be another example where, I think USC is to the party a little bit late. I just do. I think. Are they making an impact? Obviously. They got an official visit. They're on his mind. Ladies and gentlemen, you can say what you want to say about USC's Notre Dame fans. The campus is absolutely amazing.
Sure.
It is. Yeah.
Sean's a big
Cali
guy.
Experience.
So
hey, man, look, it would be one of my official visits too.
That's fair.
For more reasons than football. It definitely will be on my official visit list. So I understand that. And I just think it's like the trendy thing, right? They're the trendy school now because of the coaching changes and, of course, the history. And, they have a history of linebackers and pedigree with linebackers to the NFL. So there's something there. But I just think at the heart, the programs that are really deeply rooted with the young man.
Yep.
Notre Dame. I think Ohio State is always dangerous, in a situation like this. But then Florida just seems to, for some reason, Florida has that relationship with him. So
the swamp, man, it's got the swamp. I get it.
So we'll see. He's an IMG kid. It seems like he's very strategic.
Oh, yeah. In a good way, too, right? Like a positive way. Yeah.
Yes, right? Yeah. I want to kind of spread this out, right? Which means I'm not worried about geography. I don't think geography is an issue for this kid. So you can
clearly
throw that. That's usually a weakness for Notre Dame. Throw that out the window. That's not even a weakness. Yeah. This kid is willing to play anywhere, warm weather, cold weather, mixed weather. He doesn't care.
Three Midwest schools, 2 SEC schools, and then a Pac-12 West Coast school that he's talking about, right? So, clearly it doesn't matter.
So clearly he doesn't worry about that. But I just really think relationship and opportunity at the end of the day is what Notre Dame can offer.
Sure.
It's really Notre Dame. Look, Notre Dame is a top 5 offer in college football. If we're including everything that comes with it,
right?
This is one of the top offers a kid can get, and that's undeniable. So the feather that Notre Dame does have is the relationship with family, the connection, his brother and what he speaks. And if his brother speaks highly, you already know how his parents feel about Notre Dame based upon the success and what position it put his brother in. So
yep.
I think he is do you think he shifted his decision, or do you think he is just in a position where he wants to collect the information before his season starts?
Well, I'm curious if this is a Notre Dame decision, if this is a Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng decision. I'm not sure which one it is, Sean, but I asked him about an updated timeline, and he said that he still wants to commit December or during the season sometime. So like this isn't he's not committing during the summer or anything like that type of decision. The timeline is still the same, which is interesting. So yeah. A couple of those schools that are in there though, Sean, just kind of interesting. Georgia is interesting because I have never heard Nathaniel talk about Georgia. Never. Now, obviously, Georgia is Georgia, right? So anytime Georgia's involved, that gives you pause. Like that means something, right? The other one's Ohio State, who he just had. So Ohio State, he just visited, Sean. I'm going to make a prediction here. This is going to be kind of a crazy prediction for a kid that's a IMG kid as well, that Florida's been on the conversation for a while. Georgia's been on the conversation. I think this one ends up being a Notre Dame Ohio State battle, which we've been here before. Now it's a completely different situation, right? Just because Notre Dame was able to land a Kingston Viliamo Asa in the 2024 class does not mean that they can do the same thing with Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, but I have a feeling this is going to be Ohio State Notre Dame battle. Yeah, Archer, I wasn't talking about the OV list. When I interviewed him yesterday on Sunday, he told me that Georgia was one of the schools that is on his top group. So he mentioned Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, Georgia, Florida, USC was the schools. So I don't know if he's adding more official visits or not. But yeah, but I think this ends up being a Notre Dame Ohio State battle, Sean. I don't know how I feel about that one, though. I don't know how I feel. I feel like I would give Notre Dame the slight edge, maybe, but like, I don't know. Maybe it's because Notre Dame just won a big one last cycle. So now I think that it's going to be like, it's going to be their payback. Ohio State's payback. Like, you got Kingston. We're taking Nathaniel now. You know what I mean? Like, maybe it's one of those vibes, but I'm interested to see if that does come to fruition because I feel like that's a Notre Dame Ohio State thing. So he's from Maryland originally. He went to DeMatha Catholic before he transferred down to IMG for someone asking there. So we'll see, man. We'll see. Let's talk another linebacker, Sean. Madden Feriamo, who's a California linebacker in the class of 2025. Now, this one's super interesting, Sean, because he visited Notre Dame I guess a month ago, around there, a month and a half ago, somewhere in that ballpark. Now, anticipate him to come back for an official visit more than likely. This is one, Sean, where like before the recent buzz over the last couple months here, I didn't really think Notre Dame was in that great of a position with Madden Feriamo, but Madden Feriamo included Notre Dame in his top 4 schools. Clearly, they have made a lot of progress there. And from a source close to Notre Dame, Sean, this might be the linebacker that they feel best about right now is Madden Feriamo. So the kid does not do interviews, just doesn't do interviews. He might tell someone he's going on a visit or something, but like I remember I had an interview or two with him early on in his recruitment, and I think he's just one of those kids where it's like, I don't want to talk to media anymore. Like I'm in decision-making mode. I'm trying to figure this out. Like I don't want to talk to people. Or maybe I just smell. I don't know. And he can smell me through the phone. I don't know if that's it either, but I guess that could be possible. I don't know. But regardless, this is just my pulse on what our sources are telling us here. I'm going to give this one a 6, Sean. Slightly more than 50-50. I think Notre Dame has a very good chance with Madden Feriamo. I am not to the point of where I think that Notre Dame is the unquestioned leader and that they're the only team that matters or anything like that. But they seem to feel very confidently where they are with Madden Feriamo. So maybe for the second straight year, they might get a big-time linebacker out of the state of California. Madden Feriamo. Feel pretty good about him right now.
That's good to hear. Because like you said, in our discussions early on, we didn't feel as confident, and we love the kid. We absolutely love his ability to play. So I'm excited to hear that news. I think, over the last week, I think like the buzz about how they feel about their recruitment and where he sits with them or where they sit with him is very encouraging. It's very, very encouraging. Laverne, man, by the way, Laverne is a great area, man. It's a great area out there by Ontario. You fly right into Ontario Airport. Quick 30-minute drive.
Notre Dame's looking at a 2027 quarterback out of Ontario Catholic, Sean. So
there you go.
Man.
Hey, Notre Dame has found a little sweet spot out there.
Funny enough, the quarterback I'm talking about is Daniel Milky, I believe is how you pronounce his name, 2027 quarterback who actually went to Bonita last year, but transferred to Ontario Catholic now. So I assume that they are in the same relative ballpark of location. If that was a switch that made, I would assume. But yeah.
No, I'm not a Cali expert. My wife's best friend just happens to live in Rancho, which is right next to Ontario. And
you should troll Notre Dame
outlet mall. Great outlet mall, by the way.
Troll Notre Dame fans and put in your bio California expert. I'm sure they would love that, Sean. Just that's it. California Don't even say like recruiting analyst or anything. Just a California
expert, father of a USC grad. You know what? I'm going to change my profile today. I'm going to change my profile today just to troll. I'm going to do it just to troll. Yo, and somebody was like, why would anybody send their kid to USC? Because it's one of the top theater and film schools, and it's smack dab right in the middle of Hollywood. And she graduated on Wednesday and had a job on Sunday. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
You need to do that. And then every time you go on a guest spot or when you do the Lucky Lefty podcast, you need to introduce yourself as such. California expert, father of a USC graduate, right. Sean Davis. That would be great, man. That would be great. Oh, that would be.
That's why you send your kid to a school like USC, right there. Enough said. Paying dividends already.
Notre Dame was in her top 3. She didn't care. It was about you. It was USC all the way.
Notre Dame did make the top 15, but it was that last cut down. I just couldn't sneak them in.
Oh man,
I actually snuck the Notre Dame brochure back into the top 10 pile, and she looked at me and was like, what is this doing back in here? I'm like, all right.
All right. A dad can hope, Sean. A dad can hope, right?
All I can do is make an effort. I made my best effort.
All right. Well, so yeah, that's Madden Ferriamo, the linebacker we probably feel best about right now. Let's do Noah McHale next, Sean. 2025 linebacker. We already talked about his teammate Dylan Robinson, but this is Laverne, California, Bonita linebacker Madden Ferriamo, who I know they consider him an elite prospect in the 2025 class. I consider him a very good one, high 4-star caliber player. I think he's an excellent player. 6'3", 220 pounds. Notre Dame's been on him for a long time, Sean. It's been like a year and a half. They've been on Mr. McHale for a long time. Okay. Now, Oregon, USC, a couple other schools are very high on his list. I just don't think Notre Dame has a puncher's chance. Right. But I don't think it's much of a puncher's chance, Sean. I would give this one like a 3, maybe a 3.5. I think that Oregon, USC, a couple of those schools are just a little bit higher on the list for Noah McHale right now. So that's why I didn't lead off on him, because I wanted to lead off on a couple positive notes there. But I do think that Noah McHale is one that's things are kind of transition. They're starting to transition to the downtrots, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It was a little bit better feeling a couple of months ago. Yes. And I agree with you. Now things are starting to trend down, but that's the benefit of Notre Dame, right? Jumping out front and then getting the true assessment of where you stand, right? Rather than staying in on a kid and you feel like you have a good feel, and then all of a sudden you get blindsided, like, wait a minute, what's going on? No, find out early. Let's find out early where we sit with kids, and then we can choose to move on. And that's what Notre Dame, they haven't chosen to move on, but it just seems like, it's not trending in the right direction.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not. But again, we'll see if Notre Dame's able to reverse that momentum down the stretch. But yeah, I think that things are trending in the opposite direction for Madden Ferriamo. Last linebacker on the list, we already talked about one, Bradenton, Florida. IMG Academy linebacker in Mr. Nathaniel Wusu-Boateng. I'll raise you him and give you another, Sean. His name's Gavin Nix, 6 foot, 225 pounds. This one's a very intriguing one because I feel a little, I want to phrase this the best way I can. So Gavin has been in Notre Dame twice. Hasn't set up an official in Notre Dame, but I think there's a pretty decent chance they'll get an official from him. I think there's a pretty good chance. Sean, as of today, if Notre Dame pushes for Gavin Nix, I think that it could be a coin flip type of conversation. But I'm just not sure if they will necessarily push for him. I'm just a little bit in between on that. So I'm going to go down to a 4.5. I think it's slightly less than a coin flip just because I'm not sure if Notre Dame is going to prioritize him over a couple guys higher on their board right now. And let's say they get a Madden Feriamo. I think there's a chance that they might just stick with 3 and keep pushing for Nathaniel Wusu-Boateng to potentially be their 4th. I'm not sure that if they get Madden Feriamo, let's say that they'll push for Gavin Nix, if that makes sense. I think they'll stay at 3 and then they'll move to 4 if Nathaniel wants to come, if Wusu-Boateng wants to come. So I'll say 4.5 because I do think there's a decent chance that they could get Gavin Nix if they miss out on a player or 2. That's kind of my pulse on this recruitment today.
This is where Notre Dame recruiting has gotten to, where a kid like Gavin Nix could be the consolation prize. A kid like Dylan Robinson could be the consolation prize.
And by the way, Sean, on Gavin Nix, I had the chance to speak to Gavin a month and a half ago, probably over the phone. Great kid, man. He would fit at Notre Dame. There's no doubt. But I just think that I think you're right. You're at a point in linebacker recruiting where you might just value a couple guys a little bit more than Gavin, who is considered a top 100 recruit by a couple different platforms. I think you're right about that. 100%.
Yeah. And look, it's a good time to be a Notre Dame fan. I'll say that. If we're having these debates and these arguments in recruiting, then you definitely can see the change that is taking place. Like, we're talking about 4 wide receivers that are like, wow. And you're talking about linebackers now, regardless of the confidence level, where it's like, okay.
It's funny, man. It's hilarious, Sean. It's really, really hilarious, dude. When you think, because linebacker recruiting, I know we had that little spot in 2024 linebacker recruiting where we're like, I don't really know what's happening right now. Like, there's so many guys on the board. I don't know who Notre Dame is prioritizing, but they ended up with a really good linebacker class in 2024. They had an excellent one in 2023. They had a really good one in 2022, and they're going to have another really good one more than likely in 2025. Like, this is just the norm at Notre Dame. Linebacker recruiting is going to be great, right? Because you have Marcus Freeman, you have Al Golden, and you have Max Bulla, who all help with linebacker recruiting. So, yeah, I think they'll be in a good spot there. I think they'll have a decent chance with Gavin Nix if they push for him, but it depends if they choose to push. It depends how they fill out with Madden Feriamo and a couple of the other guys on the board. So that's linebackers there, Sean. Let's go defensive backs, and then we're out of here, okay? Defensive backs. Notre Dame already has a potential elite class in 2025 in the secondary. You have, in my opinion, just my opinion, you have Dallas Golden and Ivan Taylor, who I believe are top 50 caliber players, okay? You have Ethan Long, who's a legit 4-star player, and then you have Cree Thomas, who I think is a legit 4-star player. You have 4 really good commitments, Sean, but you have a couple high caliber targets still on the board. Let's start at corner, okay, because this is an interesting one. Mark Zachary, who is a 2025 corner out of Indianapolis, Indiana, Ben Davis. This one, Sean, this is going to be my highest one of the day, okay? I'm giving this one like an 8.5, man, maybe a 9, okay? Notre Dame is the absolute team to beat for Mark Zachary. Mark Zachary also just set a commitment date before we jumped on, like right as we were jumping off. He will make a commitment on March 25th, okay? So the end of this month. I believe that Notre Dame is absolutely the team to beat. I know that a team like Michigan has done a great job, for instance, with Mark, and I think that Michigan is probably the second team, or I say May 25th. I'm sorry, March, April, May. Yeah, we're in May. Sorry. May 25th, he will be making his commitments. The end of this month. Notre Dame, Michigan are the top 2 for Mark Zachary. I believe that Mark Zachary I believe that Notre Dame is the team to beat for Mark Zachary without question. I'll give this one an 8.5 or a 9, Sean. Mark Zachary.
Look, Notre Dame has weathered the storm. That's the way I can characterize this recruitment, right? The Notre Dame, it's pretty safe to say, has been close to the leader of the pack for Mark Zachary in this recruitment for a while. Now they just had to sit and wait for this young man to go through his process. And now we get to see the culmination coming up on May 26th. So it's going to be, was it May 25th?
May 25th.
May 25th. I'm sorry. That should, my niece goes on prom that day. So that should be like solidified in my head. May 25th. But no, super excited that Notre Dame is in line to land a talented young man out of Indianapolis.
Yep. And so he'll be selecting between Notre Dame. I want to make sure I get the top 4 correct. I know Michigan is on that list. Yeah, so it's Notre Dame, Michigan, Florida, and Cincinnati, Sean. Those are the top 4 finalists for Mark Zachary, making his decision on May 25th, the end of this month. Okay.
Florida's in on a lot of kids in the 20. Man, Florida.
The Swamp, man.
Shout out to Billy. Billy Ball down there. He's trying to change the tide.
Well, if Billy doesn't win some games early on in the year, he might be out of his job. So he better keep trying, man. You better keep putting that effort in.
You're right about that. You're right about that.
Oh, man. So Mark Zachary, Notre Dame's in a great place heading towards his decision date at the end of this month. Sean, I want to ask you one question before we move on to a couple of the defensive backs, because there's not a big list that we're working through anymore, because again, there's already 4 commitments in the class for Notre Dame in the secondary. My question is, ready? A cornerback class of Dallas Golden, Creed Thomas, and potentially Mark Zachary is blank. You have to pick a word to fill in that blank. I'm sorry. I didn't prepare you from this.
I need to flow. No. Repeat it, because I want to be able to flow into it.
Dallas a cornerback 3-man class of Dallas Golden, potentially Mark Zachary, and Creed Thomas is blank.
Championship level.
Oh yeah. Go in on that, man. Let me hear it.
Championship level. That's the type of championship level recruiting at that position that we've been waiting for. We've seen it at one half of the defensive backfield with Mike Mickens and defensive backfield cornerbacks, but now with him being the coach over the entire secondary, and we have to tip a cap to the former safety coach at Notre Dame, the work that he was starting to change the tide on his own, before going on to join Jim Harbaugh with the Los Angeles Chargers. So I think this has been something that has been coming at Notre Dame. And now, yes, this is that tide-turning championship level secondary haul in totality that Notre Dame can say, this bookmark this. This is when Notre Dame took the next step in secondary recruiting in the 25 class. You can absolutely bookmark it.
So another corner, Sean, I just want to hit on real quick, and then we'll move on, because there's not much of a conversation, because he just named the top 4 and Notre Dame was not included. That is modern day. So Santa Ana, California, modern day cornerback Chuck McDonald, who Notre Dame liked him he liked Notre Dame as well. He did not make Notre Dame's top 4 though. So obviously confidence level is very low there as of today, but let's move on, Sean. Last two guys I want to talk about.
They didn't make his top 4.
They didn't make his top 4. They did not. Nope, they did not make it. What did I say the other way?
You said he did not make Notre Dame's top 4.
Well, he might not make their top 4 either. So I mean,
that's a good point. That's a good point.
That's funny. Yes, Notre Dame did not make the top 4 for Chuck McDonald, who Notre Dame was actively recruiting and a player that Notre Dame did like. So he was a player. It's not like Notre Dame cooled off on him or anything like that. They did like Chuck McDonald. 2 guys, Sean. This kid might be, and this is a big statement, okay? Because Notre Dame's got some high-level dudes in this class, Dallas Golden, Ivan Taylor, those types of kids. If Jadon Blair, safety out of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Mount Tabor, picks Notre Dame, I think he could be I think he could be the top player in the 2025 class for Notre Dame.
Let me bask in that for a second.
Okay. Basket.
Oh, that sounds so good. That sounds so good. If Jadon Blair commits to Notre Dame in the 25 class, I keep ringing in my ear over and over again. That's a great sound. That's a great sound.
Well, Sean, so let's talk about Jadon Blair, okay? Because I want to drop some knowledge on y'all. I want to drop some knowledge. So 6'4", 190 plus pounds, elite level prospect, in my opinion. At worst, he's a top 50 player in my mind. I think he has 5-star talent, though. I really do. I don't know if he's necessarily a 5-star yet, but I think he could definitely get there with another year. I think that he has that type of upside, man. He's got a lot of Kyle Hamilton in his game. There's a whole lot of Kyle Hamilton in his game. Now, Sean, he has officials set up for June, excuse me. One is to Notre Dame, obviously. From the 7th to the 9th, he will be on campus. Now, there are a couple of schools that have done a really good job with Jadon Blair. I will say this, okay, first and foremost. Notre Dame recovered when Chris O'Leary left because Mike Mickens, I think, has made a tremendous relationship with Jadon Blair. And I think that they weathered that storm of a coaching change that could have threatened that one at some point, right? So first and foremost, Notre Dame is in a very good spot right now with Jadon. Now, Penn State has been in the conversation for a while. I think they're still a team that he likes. Michigan is one that's making like a late push here and has really kind of asserted themselves. I think that they are probably number 2 for Jadon right now, in my opinion. It's just based upon what I know. But I think Notre Dame is number 1. I do. Now, Notre Dame has a firm understanding of where you are with Jadon Blair as far as how much he likes him. And also, you have a commitment date already from Jadon Blair. He is going to commit on July 5th, which is also his birthday, Sean. By the way, Sean, you know that junior film you watched of Jadon Blair? You know that one? He's turning 17 on July 5th. He was 16 as a junior.
About it.
Incredible, man. Like, just guys, go watch Jadon Blair's junior film and now say in your mind, that kid's 16. Say that in your mind. He is not turning 17 until July 5th. I literally have a conversation with someone close to him, Sean, where I was like, oh, is he turning 18 on July 5th? No, he's turning 17, bro. What? What? That's nuts, man. Absolutely nuts. Also a all-conference basketball player. Very good basketball player, by the way, for Mount Tabor. So elite level prospect, Sean. Look, if Notre Dame sees this one to the finish and they are consistent and they do everything they need to do, this is like an 8, 7.5 or an 8. I think Notre Dame is the clear team to beat here, Sean. It's just going to be about patience for Notre Dame. If you remain patient and you finish this one out through the end, I think you have a great chance at landing Jadon Blair. I think Michigan is the only school, really, in my opinion, maybe Penn State in there as well, that are threatening that at all. But I do think Notre Dame is the absolute team to beat for Jadon Blair. I do.
That's nothing else for me to add to that. I don't even want to mess it up. From your lips to God's ears. It's as simple as that. That's it. I've been sold on the kid, and I've been sold on the fact that what you just expressed, the only thing that I felt like was going to derail that or could derail that was a departure of a certain coach. Yep. That could be a major derailment to Notre Dame ultimately being able to land the commitment from Jadon Blair. And once again, I don't know if it's Mike Mickens. I don't know if it's a combination of Mickens, Bowden, and Freeman.
Right.
Whatever it is and whatever is needed, it has needed to be with Chris O'Leary's departure. I appreciate it as a Notre Dame fan.
Yep.
I appreciate it because this is a kid. How many must-gets would you say exist in the 25 class?
As of today, there's a wide receiver or two that I would say is the must-get, right? Like, you need to get a high-level wide receiver. Linebacker-wise, I would say, guys, I would say a linebacker is a must-get. And then after that, Sean, I don't know if I would necessarily say Jadon Blair's a must-get, but he's a guy you want every single time, right? Like, he might not necessarily be a need, but he's a want without question because he's an elite level player.
Let me take must out of the
Yeah.
fray.
Yep.
Get him.
Oh, I mean, I
Get
said
him.
it, Sean. I said it. I think that he
Get
is.
him.
If Jadon Blair commits to Notre Dame, I think he's the best player in the class. Fire. I
Get
just think he's
him.
the best player in the class. I
Get
just think he's the
him.
best player in the class. Yeah.
Yes.
Him, the two guys. Look. I think that Ivan Taylor's in that realm too, but I think that it's a conversation between Dallas Golden and Jadon Blair. Like, who's better?
Yeah.
You can have your pick. I mean, I'll probably take Jadon, but like if you said Dallas Golden, I'd be like, okay, cool. We can have that conversation. I mean, Dallas is fantastic. Like, there's no doubt about it, right? So, yeah. Look, I'll say it like this. I'll phrase it this way, and this is how I believe about this one. Notre Dame is the team to beat and has a chance to land Jadon Blair as long as they do everything they need to do down the stretch. That's it. If they just stay focused and do what they have been doing and are patient and see it all the way through, I think Jadon Blair ends up being Irish. But, that's up to Notre Dame now, obviously, to maintain that patience and be able to be that team consistently, right? So we'll see. But I do think that Notre Dame is the leader for Jadon Blair. Last guy I want to hit on real quick, not as much in depth, but he is taking a visit to Notre Dame early in June, is New Jersey cornerback Jameer Joseph. He's out of St. Joseph's in Montvale, New Jersey here, Sean. He's a kid that can play corner. He can also play safety. So technically he can fit both areas. But the interesting thing about him, Sean, is as of today, Notre Dame is for sure going to take 3 corners, but it's not a foregone conclusion that they'll take 4 corners. Okay. So there's 3. If Mark Zachary commits on the 25th of this month, on May 25th, that means that there's only one secondary spot really that's available. And that's that third safety spot potentially. Now, does that mean that could Jameer be a guy that you fall back on if you don't get Jadon? Is he a guy that Notre Dame will value to the level of a Jadon Blair, where they'll say, like, we'll just take him because he's a really good player? I'm not necessarily sure there, Sean. I think Notre Dame has a good chance with him ultimately. If they push for Jameer Joseph, I think it's probably a 5 or a 6 as far as like a confidence level. I think that they would have a good chance. I'm just interested to see how this class fills up, because I'm just not sure if there's going to be a spot necessarily, if that makes sense. So it's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. It is something we talked about today. I think to sum it all up, once again, Jameer Joseph is a kid that you just look at and you're like, oh man,
It's good, man.
Is this? I don't. First of all, I'm going to stop using fallback and consolation when it comes to these kids, because they put in too much work to get to this position to even be in consideration. But if they end up being the additions to the 25 class, then Notre Dame fans should feel very happy.
Yes.
With all of the young men that we've talked about today.
No doubt.
Regardless of what the confidence level that we gave, if these young men end up at Notre Dame and they end up in 25 class, ladies and gentlemen, things are changing and have changed in Notre Dame recruiting. It's evident. It is very evident. We're telling you, it's evident.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and Green Man, I think Green Man's a troll, but he said convert wide receivers to defensive back happens often. Well, Notre Dame's not going to have to convert anybody to a defensive back if they keep landing the dudes that they're landing. Okay, so it's not going to be a necessity. Sean, we had one super chat here that was actually directed towards you. So Zach actually asked this on the mailbag, I believe, on Friday. So he threw it a super chat here to get your perspective, because he actually asked it on Friday in case you were on the show, or actually you may have asked it last Monday. I can't remember. Zach Nichols, though, super chat. Thank you so much, Zach. Appreciate you, sir. All right, Sean Davis. I need someone who can appreciate this joke. Is it just me, or does Drake run OVO like Chancey Stuckey runs a wide receiver room?
I would probably compare Drake fans and their fandom to the way he ran the wide receiver room. A lot of favoritism.
Sean, people were asking me about this, and I'm like, dude, I know that there's been some diss tracks and stuff and like a back and forth,
Well,
but like I don't know enough about
yeah.
this, man. Like I don't know
I'll
enough about this
I'll
stuff.
sum it because we're going to talk about this a little bit later in the week, but I'll sum it
Yeah.
up like this. I just happened to be in Los Angeles last week, like in the midst of everything.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time in the car, bro, transporting family. We had 16 family members out in Los Angeles with it. Bro,
Yeah.
I heard Drake on the radio twice in a week. Twice. And I happened to hear Kendrick Lamar 6 times in 1 hour on the radio.
Are you a Kendrick fan? Do you like Kendrick?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Like going back to like before his very first album, mixtapes. Absolutely.
I actually like Kendrick too, Sean. I'm not like I'm not a rap guy to the degree that you are, obviously, or that Brian was, that type of thing. But when I used to hang out right after high school, like in college, I used to play Kendrick a lot, and I like Kendrick Lamar. He's good. Got some good songs. I like him.
Yeah, I think it in totality, I enjoyed the entertainment value of the music, but the totality of it has gotten a little messy, unfortunately. So, as always, I just pray that everyone is living when the dust settles.
Sure. We were talking about like weird lyrics though, Sean, on the show. And I didn't say this one directly, but I heard that Kendrick once compared his a member to a Eiffel Tower. I don't know if you've heard that one. Yeah. So
I can't remember directly, but
we don't have to go there.
I like what Zach was trying to do there, though. I do.
Yeah.
It was. It does. Because when I saw it, I actually saw it when it popped up and I chuckled. I was like, yo, that's funny. That's funny. But yeah, I definitely get it.
Well, Zach, we appreciate you, sir. We appreciate everyone for dropping in today. Thank you so much for joining the show. We hope that you enjoyed our conversation with Baylin Trujillo, who is a great quarterback coach, working both with Brady Hart and Noah Grubbs in the 2026 recruiting class. Also gave you guys a little bit of temperature barometer on how things are going with 2025 recruiting, now tailing end to official visit season. Before you go, podcast, YouTube, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit that notification bell if you listen to us on your favorite podcast platform, whether that's Apple, Spotify, or anything in between. Make sure you subscribe, 5-star review, and go over to boards.irishbreakdown.com. You can also find all free content at irishbreakdown.com on Athlon for now. So make sure you go and check out that platform as well. That is Sean Davis. I am Ryan Roberts. Thank you all so much for joining the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour today here on the Irish Breakdown Podcast. See y'all.